Alrighty, going to call to order today's meeting of the Select Board, 5/28/2024, starting at 5:30. We have a quorum. We have one excused absence today, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, any amendments to the agenda? Jerry or anybody have anything? Cool. Any public comment? Yep. Alright, come on, you can come on up. For clarity for public comment, this is a period of time where members from the public who live in Durham can come up, state their name and the street that they live on, and make any comment they want, limited to 3 minutes. And this, we just let folks know it's not a question or answer period, and there's not a response from the board. This is just a chance to share thoughts or concerns or anything like that. So if we don't respond to something, it's not that we're not taking the comment seriously. Just caveat that. So come on up. And just make sure you lean into the microphone with your name and your street.
Michael Oska, Davis Road.
All right. You good? Yep, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm here to speak as the runner-up to the RSU 5 school board election from Friday, April 5th. There were 391 votes cast. I lost by 1.2%. And I'm not here to make a case for myself, as I've already been interviewed for this position with the voters of Durham. I spent weeks going door to door, signed close to 1,000 postcards, placed yard signs, holding Q&A sessions, etc. I've made my case to those who showed up on a miserable weather day back in April. I'm here to address the process, which is disconcerting to say the least. I understand this board is bound by current guidelines, but I would respectfully suggest they address the current process, which leaves voters without a voice. A small group of select board members will totally usurp the voices who braved terrible weather on April 5th by filling the upcoming vacancy by fiat. When going door to door throughout March, the major concerns brought to my attention by parents and grandparents were, in no order of importance, sexualization of our children, the pornography available to them in the school library, and the insanity of DEI. What they felt added insult to injury was a refusal of the sitting school board to listen to their concerns. In other words, they had no voice. I hope the irony is not lost on this select board that they will once again render the parents without a voice by usurping the voters of Durham. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Any additional public comment from anyone? Okay, seeing none. Oh, did you have a question? Okay, cool. Yeah, so tonight is, as those watching from home know, we're starting a little early. Where our town legal counsel is expiring at the end of the month, correct? And so we're in the process of hearing from those who responded to our RFP. So before we move into old business or new business tonight, we're just going to hear from both of the legal firms who responded, and we've got this scheduled to go till about 6 o'clock. So, did you have anything you wanted to say, Jerry, before we got started?
No, I have some questions. I don't
Yeah.
know if...
Awesome. So, do you have process questions, or do you have questions for the folks?
Yep, once we get started.
Cool. I guess what I would like to do, unless anyone else has any objection to this, is I figured we would just get a quick introduction from both of them, and then we have slated here, in no particular order, hearing from Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott first, and then is it Pretty Flaherty? Flaherty. Sorry.
Yeah.
Struggle with names. You all heard that already. So, and they'll be next. So, just brief introduction for both of you, and then we'll start with Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott.
Sure. You
Sure.
want to go first?
Yeah, so my name is Grady Burns. I'm one of the attorneys here for Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott.
Yeah, and I'm Amy Dietrich. I think you have our bios in here, so I won't repeat a whole lot of what's in there, although I will notice I think my picture's a little outdated, so I hope you'll forgive me. That was a while back.
Mine was in fact missing, so now you can put a name to the face.
So between the two of us, my practice focuses primarily on the employment law side of municipal law. So the areas in which I typically get phone calls are around a lot of issues around paid leave, workers' comp, accommodations, people who are injured, can they come back? Should they come back? How can they come back? Are they going to be paid while they're out? How are they going to be paid while they're out? And talking through those issues. We also do a lot of work on policies, as you know, and I'm looking at Jerry because he's probably in the thick of it. There are a lot of new laws and policies that come up every year, and we have to look at your handbooks and your policies and update them, make sure they're compliant. So a lot of people right now are thinking about paid family leave, which is going to be coming up in the next few years. There was also earned paid leave. That was the big sort of topic of conversation for several years. But my side tends to focus on the people and the policies. And I'll let Grady talk about his specialty in a minute. But I think that what we try and do is we try and divide and conquer so that you always have somebody that you can call and you know which person to call with which kind of problem.
Yeah, and I would say my expertise falls under the category of just about everything else. I am a general municipal practitioner. I've been practicing in the area of municipal law, both for municipalities and counties as well as private clients, being representing them to municipalities and public entities for my entire legal career. Prior to becoming a lawyer, I was bitten by the local government bug. I briefly served on the Auburn City Council, which was my first foray into municipal government. And from there, ultimately became an attorney, and that's been the work that I've done throughout my time as a lawyer. So in a normal day, I will be handling everything from ordinance drafting and revision and review, working with towns and cities on issues related to their town meeting warrants, dealing with freedom of access requests and helping to ensure that towns are timely acknowledging those, assisting with any questions regarding confidential information, as well as I also do a fair amount of representation in municipal and land use litigation, whether that is Rule 80B appeals for land use issues, permitting issues, as well as before planning boards and zoning boards of appeal. I've also done work in the past with code enforcement officers, helping them to draft notices of violation, as well as helping them to actually bring forward those NOVs to court if necessary in order to bring compliance through the Rule 80K process. So our firm is 14 attorneys. We have a broad area of practice between those 14 attorneys. So we're smaller than some, but we provide a broad array of municipal government experience that we could bring to bear for you. And certainly we're happy to answer any questions that you might have as well.
All right. Cool. Well, with this framework tonight, we'll continue with you, and I'd open the floor here to the board members and to Jerry for anyone who has questions for Grady.
You want me to start, or you want to start, Sean?
No, go for it.
Yep.
So, we've had Jack for quite a while, his firm and his folks, so, pretty big shoes to fill. We got a lot of history. How are you guys what are you guys going to do? I didn't see necessarily in the proposal what you're going to do to, I'll say, assimilate that previous knowledge. I get it that, stuff comes up, you go and research it. But what other upfront things are you going to do to look at to see what Durham's like and how things should be reacted to from say past precedents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And forgive me, it's Jack Conway, correct?
Jack.
Yeah. I know that the closing of Linnell Choate Weber is affecting a lot of clients, including a lot of municipalities right now. So I wanted to make sure I was correct in that. Part of that process, I think there are multiple pieces of that process, and it will be an ongoing process. Town government, a lot of things change and a lot of things stay the same. The issues tend to recur over time. Personalities may come and go, but relationships stay pretty constant in a lot of cases, especially with towns the size of Durham. So part of that getting up to speed would be looking through the record that has already been produced by your former attorney, looking through any current or pending issues that you've been dealing with Jack, and making sure that there is a seamless transition if there are any ongoing matters that require immediate work by our firm to ensure that no balls get dropped. We've worked across the river or for a long time on the same side of the river as Linnell Choate Weber for a long time, and we have a great relationship with those attorneys and a long-standing one between our two firms. So I'm confident that both informally and also formally with any transition of any files that we would be able to ensure that that is seamless. In terms of building relationships with the town, I think that'll be an ongoing process. I have in the past run for some towns annual boardsmanship trainings, providing opportunities really to ensure that there's an ongoing just kind of getting face time with members of the board, talking through common issues with municipal government as well as any new changes in the law. Those can be incredibly useful both for boards but also just to maintain that relationship and to answer any questions that you might have as they come up, and also to create a framework for an ongoing dialogue. We work a lot with our town administrators, with our municipal clients, fielding questions on a regular basis, and always being available and open. But I think the short answer to the long one I just gave is that we will be making ourselves available to you, the members of the town, as well as to your former attorney, to ensure that we can continue to grow that relationship if we were to begin as your counsel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Josh or Jerry, or Joe, do you have any additional questions besides that one?
I had a couple minor ones on travel. How much travel do you typically do for towns? Only I'm thinking that we never necessarily saw our attorney before, so
Yeah.
I saw it in there, and I'm like, I wonder how many times he goes to some of these other towns.
It depends. It really, it's Maine has, I think, 504 municipalities. It seems like each one of them runs things a little bit differently and has different preferences when it comes to how they might interact with their council. There are some towns that really like to see their attorney, face to face on a fairly regular basis. Some don't, and it's a lot more email communication. I think our location, being I clocked it as I drove here, it's exactly 15 minutes from our office. It gives us a good opportunity, or a relatively unique one, frankly, to be nearby and close enough that travel time, both the time and the mileage would be so marginal that we would waive those costs, and potentially provide you with more of an opportunity to interact with us. If you need to, when you need to, in person.
And one more, if I may, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So employee and retainment. So you have a number of folks that work with you in the office that do probably majority of background work. How much turnover do you really have at the organization?
That's a great question. So I can give you a small example, and then I would ask Amy for a little bit more context. She's been with the firm longer than I have, but my assistant has been with our firm for 30 years. She has been serving, working with both the attorneys who have been here for a substantial number of years, as well as our clients. And our staff is diverse in terms of their tenure with the firm, but we have a number of key staff members who have been involved with Skelton Tainter and Abbott for something on the order of decades. That includes some of our attorneys, I believe, as well. But Amy might have a more specific answer for that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to speak to that. So I've been at Skelton Tainter and Abbott for about a decade now. And speaking to the lawyer side of it, we have a collection of shareholders. Gosh, I think we're 6 or 8 at this point. And Skelton Tainter and Abbott had a big wave of retirements about between 5 to 10 years ago. And the overwhelming majority of the shareholders who are left are, like myself, in their 40s, 50s, and up into their early 60s. But we work very hard to have transition plans and succession plans so our firm doesn't end up closing. So we build in succession plans for every department, like real estate, municipal law, every, kind of different specialty that we have. And we have very, very little turnover in terms of shareholders. I can't remember I think somebody left last year, but it was to sort of leave the practice of litigation entirely.
And,
So we've, I think, how long has Skelton Taylor been? I know you.
our firm's been in continuous practice for over 160 years
Yeah.
now within Lewiston Auburn. We are hoping for at least 160 more. And
I won't be there for all of that.
nor I. But some of our relationships, including with some of our public sector clients, they span decades. Some the better half a century at this point. Those relationships are longer than any individual member of any of those organizations. And I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on, as Amy said, is both, the history of our presence within the community, but also our ongoing impact with our clients and our continuity over time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Josh, did you have any questions?
All day.
I was gonna let Jerry back clean up here on questions, so. Or you can, actually. Jerry, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay, awesome.
So interaction between the law firm and the town is probably going to be mostly through me. So you'll be talking to me a lot. If I have a question that you can answer in 4 minutes, how do you build that?
If it's so I could speak for myself. If it's a quick phone call, and it's a substantive issue that where it's literally hey Jerry, oh it's a good question. Let me fire off a quick email to you. We bill in tenth an hour increments. So for that, if it's a for things that are substantive where legal work is being done. I would say generally we will capture that time, but if it's administrative or scheduling a meeting, things like that, certainly those would be things that we bill for. And also, if it is truly a 30-second call, I think that's probably not one that's making it onto the billing sheet as well. For
But generally speaking, Skelton Taylor and Abbott, we use a time tracking system called Tabs. And so when we start work on it, I'm looking at Josh because I know he's a lawyer too. I don't know if you use it as well.
Not now, no.
No, you don't. Well, maybe you have experience with it, but you have a timer. So when you start doing work, you hit it, and then when you stop work, you hit it again. And so you're only billed for exactly the time that we do work, and that's how I personally track it. I know Grady does too, because there's no other way to remember what you were doing, a week ago at 2:37 p.m. You've got to have some sort of contemporaneous record.
Good, thank you.
Jerry, you can just keep going with your questions.
Okay, next question is, I'm glad you mentioned policies and personnel policies, because the personnel policies here, currently, the personnel handbook is very old. There may be some things in there that are not even legal today, actually. So,
I don't think you're supposed to say that.
but I'm trying to get to my,
You're right, I was gonna add a similar question.
so, can you tell me, can you walk me through the best way to update that policy? Is it something, tell me, just put in there whatever you want, your possible review, and walk me through the best way
Yeah.
that we could have a personnel policy that's fair and competitive with other municipalities.
So I will first say that it would be extremely unusual for me to review a personnel handbook that wasn't illegal in some way. So just so you feel like you're seen. The laws change all the time, and what I tend to do is what my clients want me to do. But the way that I find it to be most efficient is that I usually ask you to send me in Word a version of your personnel handbook and maybe flag for me the sections that aren't working well, or hey, I think I might have heard something that changed about the law, what about this? And so I read the whole thing, but I focus on those. And having reviewed dozens and dozens of personnel handbooks, I have a lot of samples and language I can use, so I can tell you you're missing a main family medical leave policy, which most municipalities are. you don't need to offer FMLA maybe, but you have to offer the main version. And so then I propose to you language that would comply with the law in that regard. Or it could be something like, the Maine Human Rights Act has been amended 6 times since you last looked at your policies in 1998, so we've got to update the protected classes, and that's how we tend to do it. And then what I'll usually do is I'll send the town manager a version of that, and we'll go back and forth to make sure that the language is what you think is appropriate. And then maybe we'll present it to the select board, or, whatever whoever's voting on it, and we'll explain why we want to make the changes that we're making. Whether it's because we have to, or we think it's a good idea, or it's fixing a problem. Like I said, PTO, paid time off, and medical leave, those are huge issues, and a lot of times the policies are a little too lean on those, and so you have people who are doing one thing in one department, one thing in another department, and it's better if we have one concise set of policies that cover what everybody should be doing.
Last question for me. The municipalities that you represent, have you gone through a land use codification process
That's what I was going to ask.
with them, and how did that go, and any experience with that at all?
So you mean like codifying like a land use ordinance? So in my prior experience, so I've been with Skelton. I actually just celebrated my 1-year anniversary with the firm. Prior to that, I had been at a larger firm in Portland, and there in that prior experience is the most recent time I have done a soup to nuts land use ordinance rewrite and harmonization. It is something that is often more time consuming than it usually appears to be on the front end. The last instance I did, it involved pulling together essentially 5 separate ordinances into a cohesive single land use ordinance that took the subdivision ordinance, the shoreline zoning ordinance, there was a standalone building code ordinance, as well as the town's freestanding zoning ordinance, and consolidated them into a singular, much more workable document for that town that ensured that all of those provisions spoke to each other. So every town is different. Many of the land use challenges are similar, and obviously when it comes to things like shoreline zoning, the state sets at the very least a baseline of what you must do. But to my mind, the most important thing when it comes to creating or codifying a land use ordinance is ensuring that the legal side, our side, ensuring that the language fully reflects what the town at the policy level is trying to achieve. Home rule is a beautiful thing, and setting aside some areas of land use regulation, including some of the new housing regulations that were just very recently imposed, and things like shoreline zoning, towns have a lot of flexibility when it comes to how you're going to regulate certain uses. So the first and most important thing for me as someone who reviews those ordinances is ensuring that I'm clear on what policies the town is actually trying to reach, and then looking at that language and ensuring that it actually is doing what you want it to do. And that is often a process that involves collaboration with the local planning board as well as with the select board.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm Debbie Oliver. Hi, nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Debbie.
When you take on new clients, do you have, like, in your planning stages, the, like, applied time thresholds per week? Or how do we know that you can handle what the Durham services may tax on your team?
I'll take this one. So at Skelton Taylor and Abbott, we don't have any we are a smaller firm, so we don't have sort of large rubrics like that in place. What we tend to do is we only take on the number of clients that we can handle. I saw that with respect to the Durham RFP, it's not a terribly large number of hours per year, but stuff comes up every year, so certainly it changes. What we aim to do is get back to our clients within the same day or within a couple of days of a question being asked. And certainly with a variety of people working at the firm, if I'm, say, in trial, for a week, I can kick it to somebody else if you need a response more quickly.
And are the rates the same if we have some really complex issue that's going to take a lot of time to sort through? Is the base billing rate the same, no matter what the topic is?
So we have, in our proposal, we have all of our rates. All of the shareholders at Skelton Tainter and Abbott have volunteered to take a reduction in our rate of at least 25%, down to $2.50 an hour. For some people, that's a much bigger hit. I think some of our corporate lawyers, who you might deal with if there's, some sort of transaction, it's more like a 45% cut in their rate. And then associates bill out slightly less than that. We also bill out our paralegals much less than that. And for administrative work, sending letters, doing mail, copying, we don't bill that at all.
Cool. Well, we've got about 4 minutes left here, so Josh, if you have
I'm-
questions you want to
I
clean
think
up here?
mine have been answered. I mean, my questions were the personnel policy. I think that's something that's important that we need to work on. I think Jerry does a good job of limiting sort of the communication to what it needs to be, so he's not harassing you all the time. And so, I think you've answered my questions, and of course, I mean, I know the history of the firm and most of the attorneys there, I think, still. So, I'm all set.
And my last question, because everyone covered most things pretty well, you mentioned home rule authority and the flexibility, and we have a fair amount of language here in Durham that is utilizing that flexibility, so it's not necessarily sticking to state standards. And so with the other municipalities that you've worked with, do you have a lot of experience with those municipalities having really flexed in within that home rule authority, so it's not just the baseline state level regulations that you're reviewing?
Certainly, yes. And new issues are arising all the time, and towns seem to be finding, at least in my experience, every day are finding new ways to try to address new problems or to address old problems better, even outside of the land use context. I think, when we talk about local government, we talk about land use most often, but home rule authority cuts in a lot of different ways. And in towns and municipalities, one of the reasons I love municipal government so much, and I've been a nerd for it even before I became a lawyer, is that it's often underappreciated, but it touches the average citizen's life in, I would say, numerously more ways than most other branches of government on a daily basis. So that flexibility, part of my job is knowing where the lines are. If something that the town is proposing to do, is there a state level preemption issue? What is the scope of your home rule authority to do X? That is a big part of what I do, whether that is crafting, the most recent instance I can think of that I was working on this was for one of our municipal clients. It was an ordinance looking to regulate certain types of electrical transmission through that community, which is a complicated issue and one that touches both state and federal regulatory authority. So there was a big question of how we know we can regulate this somehow, but how exactly can we in order to reach our underlying policy goals? And so that's one of the things that I enjoy most, frankly, about this type of work is helping towns be creative to solve the problems that you all are facing, because you'll be the first ones to see them. It won't be the legislature.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Well, do we have any other questions for either of our two representatives here today before we move on? Seeing no more questions, thank you very much for your time this evening. I think you answered everything really well, and we'll be back in contact with you shortly. So.
Thank you so much. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be happy to provide supplemental information if you need anything.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we have the next firm should be here. I think I saw them pull into the parking lot shortly, and we'll sit down and have the same for them. So we can just take a couple minute break here while we wait for them to come in.
I got a general question.
Yeah.
Mostly for Jerry. What's the current rates that we get charged from?
That charge is
All right. Yeah, you're in the hot seat. You all can come take a seat.
We will need a third chair.
Yeah, should I just flag one over
Yep.
here?
Pick whichever one you'd like.
Sorry, our third person, his babysitter, was sick, but he will be here in like 1 minute.
That's
So-
all right. These things happen.
Yep.
Usually 20 minutes.
Right.
So, would you like us to hold for your third person
If
to
you don't
show
mind,
up?
he'll
Yep,
be,
we
he's
can
gonna
wait for
be
a quick
here.
second.
in
So,
just one
that works.
So,
I'm gonna use the restroom real quick, and give them another minute or so.
Because I'm waiting for a work call.
That was convenient.
Better than the 4:30 wake-up call Monday was not.
Yeah.
how you doing?
The kids.
Yeah, Austin and Leah are buying a house in Holland. Yeah, they have a baby, 4-month-old baby. Crazy. Yep. Yep.
I see her here about Tasha.
Yeah, she sees Lynn when she was down to Austin because her company, their primary office.
He's walking the wrong way.
There he is, he's going the wrong way. Yeah. So she's seen her, I know she started not too late, she started pretty recently. Yeah. Yeah, they're coming up here week after next to, Brazil is having a birthday party, you know, fans from her wife is having a birthday party. And I come up here. So,
I saw a picture of
yeah, I know. He's like, he's in the text message. Makes you feel old, doesn't it? It sure does.
It's breezy.
No.
Alrighty.
Thanks for waiting a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry about
The-
that, everybody.
These things happen. It's not a big deal at all. So just like with the last group, just ask that we'll go through really briefly and have you each introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your practice, maybe what you specialize in or do within your practice, and then we'll have a series of questions for you all to choose amongst yourself who answers or how. So we've got you slated for about 30 minutes or so here to answer any questions and tell us what you want us to know. So
Thanks for having us.
yeah.
So I'll start. I'm Kristen Collins. I'm a co-chair of our municipal and finance group at Preddy. I've been practicing municipal law my entire career, so that's since 2005. And I started out at a small firm in Belfast and went to Maine Municipal Association for 6 years. And I've been at Preddy since 2016. I have done everything under the sun when it comes to municipal law, including through MMA, which of course spans all 400 some towns in the state. I used to keep a little roster where I'd check off each town that I had spoken to, and it was every single town by the time I was done there. So I am a generalist, and I am a point person for a lot of our towns, overseeing work for of all of our partners and associates for each of the clients that we have certain clients that Steve and Cam might oversee, or that I might oversee, or that Cam and I might oversee, and we kind of divide it up that way. And if I'm the designated point person on a town, for instance, I will be the one making sure that all of the work being done for that town is being done properly and timely, and the same for Cam and Steve. But I am also a member of our employment group, so I keep up to date as much as a generalist can on employment law. We do also have specialists in that area, but employment law is something that I'm especially proficient in, as well as land use and ordinance writing and everything in the land use side of things. So that is my specialty, and I'll let Cam take over.
Sure, I'm Cam Ferrante. I'm of council at Preddy Flaherty. I'm part of the municipal group and also the land use group. Like Kristen. I'm sort of a generalist in the municipal area. There's a couple cities and towns that I'm the primary attorney for, and I deal with, anything under the sun that arises with them. My specialty in the municipal area is probably public financing, so I deal with towns and cities on bond issues like lease purchase agreements for municipal equipment, occasionally TIFs and any other type of, bond anticipation notes or tax anticipation notes that they may need. So I assist them with those and ensure that they have, the financing that they need for a capital improvement or an equipment purchase when they need it. And I'll do that from start to finish through authorizing at a town meeting all the way through the actual closing on the purchase. And then aside from that, I do a lot of land use, land use enforcement actions, advise code enforcement officers on drafting notices of violation and, dealing with difficult property owners and ensuring that people are complying with the town's ordinances whenever they need to. I've been with Pretty Flaherty for a little over 3 years now. Before that, I did a stint at the revisor's office in Augusta working for the state legislature. And before that, I was an administrative attorney in New York City, and then found my way back to Maine, and I'm enjoying it very much. Steve?
I'm Steve Langsdorf. I'm the founder of Pretty's Municipal Law and Finance Group. I've been at Pretty for 38 years and more or less been practicing municipal law almost all that time. I started off as a trial lawyer. In fact, I have a long career trying jury trials and appeals to the State Supreme Court. I founded the Municipal Law Practice Group about 25 or so years ago, about the time that I became corporation counsel to the city of Augusta, a job that I still hold. I became my assistant corporation counsel in Augusta, and over the years we've grown the group from just one or two municipal clients. I've been the Rangeley Town Attorney for 33 years now, which, if you know anything about Rangeley, is quite the record, given probably all the town managers and boards that I've dealt with over the years. But if it's something to do with municipal law, I've probably been involved in it, from going to court to attending hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings, writing charters, dealing with land use issues, dealing with virtually every aspect of municipal law, over the years. And then we gradually built our municipal practice just by being in situations like this and responding to RFPs and meeting people and knowing towns and letting them know that the level of expertise and experience that we have. I think we're very, very efficient. The three of us back each other up. I expect that Cam and Kristen would most likely be the primary people who'd be dealing with Dresden, but I absolutely am available, which is good. We're very responsive, and we meet together every week and talk about the issues that towns are going through. I also am an employment lawyer as well, and have dealt with virtually every aspect of employment law, from trying cases to rewriting handbooks to whatever you need. Generally called upon frequently just to give advice as to how to handle employment situations. So we're very, very happy to be here today. We grew the group sort of organically from adding towns like Brunswick and your neighbor down the road, Lisbon and Belfast and Kittery, and a whole variety of different clients, most of whom we deal with by Zoom and email these days, being what it is. But we're very happy to be here today, and happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Awesome, thank you. Just like last time, we'll just start with questions, and Joe, do you want to kick us off again with questions?
Sure, yeah. Let me go, so, as you probably know, our previous attorney, Jack Conway, has been with us for quite some time. So quite, I'll say, big shoes to fill. How you guys plan to, look at Durham's history and feather that into what you currently know? You obviously have a large clientele base in the public sector here. How you plan on garnering that history and applying that as it applies to Durham?
So we've done this, the list of towns that Steve just took over. In every single one of those situations, there's either been a solo or a firm that we've taken from. And it often feels like it's going to be a lot bigger of a task than it actually turns out to be to take over from an existing attorney. is how I'll preface it. But to solve against any concerns, I hope that Jack is willing to, stay on in an advisory capacity and to do a kickoff call or meeting with us where he lets us know what's going on today, what are the short-term concerns, what are the long-term projects, what files do we need transferred, is he going to hold on to things so that we can access them as needed. So I hope we'll have that collegial, relationship that we've had with all of our other situations like that. Litigation obviously is the most pressing thing, so we'd want to know right away what's going on, if there's anything pending, so we don't miss deadlines and so we get our appearances in. Other than that, I think our favorite way to just take over is to meet with staff and to meet with officials and do a general rundown of what's going on. What's your sense of the town? What's the long-range plan? That is how I feel, at least, that we've best gotten up to speed with a town.
I mean, so much of it about it's just developing the new relationships. We've usually come in, and as Kristen said, we have a long list of clients, all of whom had other attorneys, before we do. We usually generally meet with staff, and I think so much about representing any town, including Durham, is just the relationships that you develop. Who do you feel comfortable with? What are you going to learn? So we talk, we find out what's going on. And like Kristen said, it ends up generally that there's less than you think in terms of what you need from the previous attorneys. Most towns are dealing with what's happening right now. What are the crises that are happening now? What do you need to be addressing, need to be working on? And sometimes absolutely getting some of that institutional knowledge, is helpful. But for us, it's just a matter of taking the time to get to know people. And we've done that successfully many times. If you haven't or you will, I strongly urge you to talk to some of the other managers that we've dealt with, many of whom were there when we took over and would be able to tell you, that we did that effectively.
A recent example for me would be the city of Belfast. They'd had a solo city attorney for 30 years who we took over from, and it was no easy task in terms of what was going on, I'll say that. But we've been able to relatively seamlessly take over a whole lot of litigation from, pretty big, convoluted Superior Court cases all the way down to some small Rule 80K enforcement actions, and it's gone swimmingly, actually.
Cool. Any other questions, Joe?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. Jerry?
So I'm the town manager, so probably have a good relationship if you're the chosen one. So as far as billing goes, say I have a real quick question, maybe it's a code enforcement question, or maybe the code officer calls you, and it's a quick down, 3-minute, 4-minute phone call. How would you bill that? Do you bill quarter hours,
1/10 of an hour.
10th of an hour? Okay.
Yep. And I find myself, if it's really quick thing, I won't take the time to even write it down or bill it. Probably some people at the firm would not like that, but yeah. And the other thing is just efficiency within that 0.1 hour is something to keep in mind. That because of our experience, we just are able to answer a lot of stuff right on the fly.
Okay. Next question is, we have some policies that really need updated, like our personnel policy. Can you just kind of walk us through how you would advise us to update that policy to keep it competitive with other municipalities within the law, employment law, and stuff like that? Is it, well, Mr. Town Manager, just write up what you think is, give it to us and we'll review, or how, walk us through how we get the best.
I can take that question, because I've been doing this quite regularly recently. Generally, we just ask to see what your current policies are. We'll take a look at that, and then we have an outstanding attorney by the name of Harper Weisberger, who works at our firm, who is extremely up to date as to what all of the current policies need to be. There's a tremendous number of policies that, unless you're doing this all the time, you can't keep up with. The NLRB is constantly putting out issues over anything that might be union-related, regardless of whether you have unions or not. So generally, I would kind of, we would have probably the municipal attorney who's working with the town sort of work as an intermediary, and then Harper would go over this, make sure everything is absolutely up to speed in terms of where it needs to be. And we would just work with you to get it passed and through. But it's something that we've been doing very, very regularly for our clients. And she's done so many of them now that she doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, because it's a really big issue right now, because policies are constantly changing. There's policies over pregnant workers. There's just a variety of things that you think you're up to date on, but you probably aren't.
Well, then we
And
have
so-
earned paid leave and all the other new regulations that have come up just within the state. So Harper is great, and but I would say we skipped a step there, which is meeting with the manager to talk about what the priorities are. And I've had, like I think New Gloucester recently went through a whole overhaul of their policy, and they started with the manager and staff trying to write the changes out in long form. And I tend to find that somewhat inefficient, because then you give it to the policy wonk lawyer and she's gonna change everything around. So I would think we would just either have you sit down with me and go over everything, or annotate the current policy with some bubbles of thoughts, and then we'd work on the language and priorities from there.
And if I can just add, Harper's also very good at making sure that you get the policy that you need. She's not going to give you a 600-page document. We're certainly not going to give you a 600-page document that you might never actually have the time to read or apply. It's going to be tailored to what the town actually encounters and advice that it actually needs to have on the books.
Yeah.
So-
And we have a huge repository,
Yeah.
of course, because of our number of clients, so it's easy to kind of pick and choose language from various policies.
Next question is, the municipalities that you've worked with, have you gone through any kind of land use codification? And how did that go? And what's your experience with that? How much should you be involved in that
Uh-huh.
process?
I think, you're the one who does the most. I'm
We've-
happy to answer
we've-
that.
We've all been
Yeah.
through them. I love a land use code. I think it's way more user-friendly to everyone than a shoreline zoning ordinance, land use ordinance, zoning ordinance, site plan ordinance. So it makes sense, at least for land use, to codify everything. But we've done full codifications as well. Typically, the town is gonna go out to an RFP and find a codification service to put everything together and put it online. So we've been involved in the ferrying of the information to the codification service, and in the sort of helping to revise things and get them uploaded. Sometimes that's the problem with those services, is it's time consuming and difficult to get things up to date. So the other part of that is to come up with practical ways that the land use ordinance in particular, which is going to be amended all the time, is always up to date and available for the general public and for your attorneys. So that's it has its ups and its downs. Generally, it's a great thing to codify, and we'd love to help you with that. But also, I think we need to realize its weaknesses and find those practical solutions. Like the city of Portland, for instance, is the city of Portland, and its land use ordinance is actually not codified. It's a PDF document. Brunswick does the same. So, there's codification in the sense of pulling it all together in a cohesive document, and then there's codification is the next step of putting it on the service, and that's where things can get a little screwy.
Do you have any other questions, Jerry?
Maybe I'll give you folks a chance.
Deb, do you have any questions?
How would you describe, once you come in and interview a number of people from our staff and everything, do you also provide like an advisory position after you view where we are, what our situation is? Do you identify risk points, things that we should be thinking about that we don't even know? I mean, how does that play in?
Yeah, I see that happening a little bit more organically, not like we're gonna sit together and kind of come up with a 10-step plan for the town, but I think we will pretty quickly see the points. For instance, just working with your ordinances for a couple of months, we're gonna know what things need to be changed. If there is a personnel issue that crops up, we'll very quickly see where the weaknesses are in the policy or the practices. And I think, for my part at least, I like to advise more on the fly, and let the situations guide what the advice should be and what the big long-term plan should be.
Yeah, we're not going to sit you down and spend a lot of time trying to figure out where issues might arise. It's
Right.
much more efficient to, ask you what your perspective is, what your opinion is. And more often than not, if you think something doesn't seem right or is difficult to administer, you've probably identified the problem for yourself. So at that point, we're happy to help.
And I think it has everything to do with getting to know the town manager, who can then say, here's where I have concerns, here's the issues that we're dealing with that are hard for us, here, what are your suggestions? And just being able to sort of count on us being able to give you advice that you think is going to be helpful in that respect. And I think that's the number one way that we figure out what's going on in every town, is just as a process of developing that relationship and gaining that trust between people, so you know that when you're hearing something, you're getting good advice and you're getting good suggestions based on all the work that we're doing. As I said, we've represented a lot of towns, we've seen a lot of situations, but frankly, every one of our towns is important to us, just because we represent Augusta or others. We don't look at it that way. We look at all of our clients as being important, and I'm not just BSing about that. That really is the way that we do things, and we very much operate as a team, talking about all these kinds of issues also. So, we see something, say, well, what have you seen over here? It's like, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. We'll talk about that further. So we try to be really open to being creative about the way that we do things, and we don't kind of knee-jerk respond to issues by saying, well, we want to write you a long memo on this, or we try to be, and we always pride ourselves on being extremely practical. A lot of towns, we'll see what happens is you get into cases, and there'll be, say a planning board decision is being challenged in court in an ADB case. Instead of just sort of automatically spending the town's money being the party defending that, there's generally always, a developer or somebody who is a real party in interest, and then there's maybe somebody who's challenging that. And so we do everything we can to let those parties in interest, kind of, carry most of the cost, for the town. And so really only jump into these issues and, as attorneys, and spend your money when we know that it's something that is going to be important to how you're seeing your town and what's important to your values and so forth, rather than just, oh, we've been sued, so, we need to spend your money, kind of thing. So we go out of our way to try to be practical in that respect.
Josh, do you have any questions?
No, I defer to Jerry if you have more.
Sure, I'll ask some questions. Town charter, how important do you think it is for a town to have a charter?
Not that important.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big believer in charters myself. I've been, actually, say we're not going to agree on everything, but I like seeing the charter. I mean, it's not critical. You can run a town without it, but I think it's great, because it really sets it's really the plan, the imprint of your unique, municipality. I've been on a number of different charter commissions myself. I was, as a citizen, I was the chair of the Hollowell, charter commission that substantially rewrote those. I've sat on, for Augusta, they had been doing a charter commission every 10 years, which thankfully we don't do anymore. We've completely rewritten the charters and so forth. To me, I think it's great, because it's your constitution, and it lets you set the framework for your town, in the way that you want to. Is it critical? Can you do everything else, by ordinance? Absolutely. But to me, I like having that all in one place, and really something for people to read and really know what your town's doing. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
They apparently have different opinions.
I was going to split the baby there.
Yeah. I mean, it is helpful, and when a town gets to a certain crossroads where it's grown, and there are, there's a lot of push-pull, and we just kind of want to better understand what the town manager's role is vis-a-vis the, personnel or things like that. Because there are some towns where it's a town manager plan technically, but there's traditionally more select board involvement. Some of those towns need to really kind of sit down and think about how we want things to go, and it's a charter that would have to modify that arrangement. The reason I have some hesitation is because I've seen the charter process go awry in a couple of towns, where you end up with a charter commission that puts in place rules that actually are kind of difficult to work with. So I point to New Gloucester again, which went through a charter commission process, and I was just telling these guys, in order to pass an ordinance in that town, it's got to go to the selectmen, then town meeting, and then a referendum for every single ordinance, no matter how urgent. And you can see why the townspeople might have liked that, but then again, it's really from a pragmatic standpoint, kind of a nightmare. So maybe that's why I'm so quick to, because I was just working with that charter and it's not my
And-
favorite.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of, stick to the middle there and say I think it really depends on the town, municipality, whether it feels that it needs that kind of clear statement, like Steve is saying, like a constitution to govern the way it moves forward and specify everyone's particular responsibilities, or if it's feels that it's being, adequately governed right now and everyone kind of understands their role and where they're supposed to be and what their responsibilities are, then, going through a charter might have more cons than pros at that point. But if there's a desire and it feels like it could be sort of a unifying, clarifying activity for the town, then I see no problem with it.
Reesberg with another question?
No.
Cool. I'll go first. I'll go last then. So, we have some ordinances in town that really utilize the home rule authority, so they fit, obviously within the legal framework that the state has, but in some instances, we might have, a more robust resource protection district or shoreline zoning requirements. And so I'm just wondering your firm's experience with working with municipalities that kind of have their own ordinances that don't always align exactly with the baseline standards, so, dealing with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about ordinances in general, and particularly sort of groundbreaking ordinances. For myself, I wrote the state's first wind ordinance, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the state's first cannabis licensing ordinance, as far as I know. And a lot of the solar ordinances that I see all over the place. So ordinances that our firm has created have been used as templates all across the state. But when we wrote them, I think it's important to understand that we were in a complete vacuum. So something like cannabis licensing, for instance, before licenses were even available from the state, we were working out, should it be a numerical limit? What's the constitutionality of shutting down uses that were already in place? How high can we go in license fees? All of that sort of stuff. So that, just in general, we are not afraid of getting out there with regulations that would be kind of new to the state, much less the town. But I'd say a lot of our towns, we have a lot of shoreland towns with a lot of varieties of variations on shoreland zoning, and very adept at, I can call Colin Clark at any time of day and he'll talk my ear off for an hour about his perspective on various shoreland zoning issues, for instance. And so we definitely have lots of towns that have ordinances that vary a little bit from the norm.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you. Joe?
Just, Abe, how many people you guys have working for you? How big is the organization? You have a lot going on, so I'm concerned it's just the three of you.
Well, we have over 90 lawyers at Petty Flaherty. Right, so that's one of the things that, we bring to the table for any firm is we pretty much have expertise in just about any area. And these lawyers, who many of them, quite frankly, are billing $500 an hour, all of them understand and are willing to work within the hourly rates that we provide for municipalities. So, we're probably the biggest legislative and lobbying firm in the state. We have connections and lawyers who handle virtually every agency in Augusta, from the DEP to the PUC, DOT, and others. We have just working with us regularly. We have a real estate attorney who works with us. We have an environmental attorney who works with us. We have an energy attorney who works with us. So we handle a lot of what goes on. We have tremendous resources of attorneys which work, within the firm, and they're all available and have been called upon many, many times to help, handle issues for municipalities. And I think that's something that absolutely, sets us apart. We have some tremendous lawyers who have, do a lot of development work in our firm, which also gives us the expertise to work with municipalities to understand how to deal with, developers when you're dealing with developers. So I think that's something that's a huge strength, with our firm. You have us, so it works in a way you're dealing with a smaller group, right? You would never are going to see anyone other than the three of us, unless there's some very specific and unusual issue that you're having to deal with. So we're not the type of firm that's just sort of like, oh, God, who's the lawyer we're seeing today kind of thing. We're not like that, at all. And so I
Yeah,
think
I
we
keep-
bring a lot to the table that way.
I keep seeing other firms that have a municipal group that has like 15 people in it or something, but then I've never seen any of them at court or at a town meeting or whatever. And I'm like, who are these people? But just as a case in point, if we had a personnel issue, Steve or I are going to probably handle the larger picture personnel issue. Let's say it's a Fair Labor Standards Act question. We've got a specialist for that. Let's say you needed a personnel investigation. We've got a specialist for that. Let's say it's a union issue. You have a group that wants to unionize. We've got an expert for that, and we know enough to be able to work with that expert and to work with you to bridge that relationship and to make sure it's all being done in the way that suits what your goal was. We don't just pass you off to somebody else.
Perfect. Any other questions? Alrighty, well, thank you all for coming here today and answering all our questions, and we know how to get hold of you if we have anything else to ask, and we'll be in touch shortly. So.
No, thank you
Thank you.
very much for that.
Thank
And
you all,
I
yeah.
said before, I strongly urge you to call the town managers that we listed, and frankly, any of the other town managers that are on our client list. But I think they'll tell you from their own experience what it's like, dealing with so for the years, and a number of towns that are similarly sized, to Durham. Talk to Christine Landis in Chelsea, or talk to Joe Roach up in Rangeley, or there's any number of different managers I think will tell you that they absolutely like working with us, and we would certainly hope to have that opportunity with you as well. So.
I've got to drop as a last thing that I live 8 miles down the road, so I would really look forward to the short travel to these
Yeah.
meetings.
I was gonna say, shorten the travel budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Perfect. Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
all.
very much.
Okay, good.
I
Nice to meet you all.
appreciate your time
Take care.
tonight.
I would like to mention something that
Go ahead.
I worked with Kristen, actually, the last place I was a coach.
Oh, cool.
And I was very, very happy with working with her, very effective, didn't waste my time. Great,
Awesome.
great process.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. Jerry, just clarification, our legal counsel ends June 1st?
31st.
May 31st? Yeah, so this is our last meeting before that. And so, are you all, I wanted to discuss a little bit about when we would make a selection for one of these organizations, one of these firms. I personally, in an ideal world, would like the time to let Heather, who's not here tonight, review the meeting, but that would push us to next month, which means we'd be without legal counsel for a few days, which makes me very uncomfortable as well. So, anyone else have any thoughts?
Are there any issues right now?
No,
Mm-hmm.
no, there's
No
burning
lawsuits,
issues.
no-
None right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in the interim, when we were soliciting for proposals, if we didn't have someone, Kristen did say that she would step up and help us out if we needed to.
Okay. Yeah, because my thought is to have this vote be at our June 11th meeting, or even try to do a special meeting, an extra meeting on June 4th, just with this being the only thing we discuss, making the decision and then moving on. So I'm opening it to any of you on the board for feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I had here was, for the board, was did we call any of the references to see how easy it is to deal with the two organizations?
So,
Or do you?
I think that would be up to Jerry to do. I can tell you, Skelton Tanner, I've dealt with, and I've not worked with either of these attorneys, although I've spoken with Amy a few times about different things. They've always been accessible, I think, and I don't know the other attorneys. One of the partners of my old firm did have a number of cases and know Steve. And so, I don't think we could go wrong either way we
Right.
went. So I mean, to me, it would be whether Jerry has a preference or whether anybody had a certain feeling. As for waiting, one question we didn't ask that probably should have would be, is there a time frame for when they could get on board? My guess is, being lawyers, it can happen overnight, so,
Right.
but
That's what I'm assuming, too.
just in case, I assume they would have said something, so.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, to me, I'm okay waiting until the 11th, or coming back on the 4th. Either way is fine with me.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you brought up a really good point. I know ultimately we have to make the decision as a board as to which firm to go with. But one thing that's important to me is, with Jerry, you being the primary interface with them, is really getting your feeling and your opinion here weighs heavily on how I would be inclined to vote, because this is an organization that you're going to have a long-standing relationship with, more so from a day-to-day standard than us as individual board members. So what is the timeline you're comfortable with, knowing that we value your insight, but also you having an idea of what's going on that might require legal counsel?
I can certainly call the town managers that listed, I know them. Christine Landis hired me in Gardner when she was the town manager there, so I know them well, I can do that. For me, and like they talked about, it really does come down to relationships, right? So I haven't worked with any one of them, so I felt like any one of them would be fine from that standpoint. I wasn't uncomfortable with any of them, and I thought they presented themselves good. But I have heard really good things about Petty Flaherty. And so I would tend to lean in that direction only because of people that I've talked to before that have them as attorneys. And
Yeah.
I think they're gonna represent, either one of them are gonna represent the town fine. None of them gave me well, I don't know if I'd wanna work with them.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that.
And
So-
the cost is, their billing rates are pretty similar.
Right.
I mean, it's close enough that I wouldn't even have that really be weighing on my mind on a deal breaker.
And I will say, one thing that I did like that the second group did say is, initially they would wanna sit down with us and talk to see what is out there,
Yeah.
burning issues, or get to know the town and start that relationship. I thought that was really,
Yeah, and one thing
good
that the second firm really made me comfortable with was their discussions on bringing different ordinances from, a vortex of nothing at all to creating something was important, because not that I'm insinuating we would want to create some ordinance for something out of thin air, but knowing that they have that experience of having done that, I think that is really valuable as well. Both firms I got good feelings from. The first gentleman, Grady, seemed very passionate about local government, which is good to hear. This organization seems like they have a lot of, infrastructure behind them to quickly respond to specific issues, and a lot of experience. So, in the standard interview format, this is where I'd be like, well, kind of want to hear from references to see what people's individual experiences are. So maybe what we could do is have you connect with some references to get some feedback in the next week or so, and then we can make a decision at our June 11th meeting if everyone's comfortable with that, or would folks rather have a special meeting to make a decision?
Either works for me.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's nothing pending that we have to worry about, and if we have, representation, if we need some in a pinch, then I'm not seeing that we have a huge risk out there. Like waiting would be all right.
And Josh, you already said you feel comfortable with the 11th.
Yeah, that's fine, although I would caution about reaching out to somebody, on that part-time basis. I think if something comes up, we should come back quickly and not just because we don't want to start with one and go, there are too many issues with that in my mind, so that would be the only comment I would have on that.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I would be most comfortable if we met on the 4th next week just to vote on this and do it right away. But if everyone else is okay with waiting, I would say that I'm fine with that, but also same kind of second what you just said there, Josh. If something pops up, maybe our response to how to handle it will be a decision-making response on who to go with at the same time, rather than saying, yeah, can we use you for a week until we pick somebody, you know? And so, when there's nothing to worry about, it's when I worry the most, you know? But if folks are okay with waiting till the 11th and making a decision then, we can put that on the agenda, so. Any other questions?
No, I'll just make one more comment.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of nice that the first attorney said they were like only 15 minutes down the road. That's really nice. And then the second group said she was only 8 minutes down the road, so that kind of.
Yeah. The only difference there is the first attorney said that they wouldn't charge mileage,
Right.
which is, you know, nominal in the long run, but
In
It adds
the
up.
20
It
months
does,
that
yeah.
I've been here, Jack hasn't visited the town office once.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I'm hoping we might, you know, not that I want to wish that we need more use of a lawyer, but hoping that we build a good relationship with the new council as well. Thought it was interesting that the first organization's been around for 165 years or something. It's always impressive when there's an organization that long and there's still someone with the same last name working there.
So June 11th, we're gonna put that on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Alrighty, old business. First up, are we done with questions about the legal firm selection process? Cool. Alright, old business, review of the Union Church quitclaim deed. Jerry?
Yeah, so Jack wrote up the deed. I didn't really have any concerns or questions. I just wanted you folks to look at it. If you have any concerns or questions, I can bring that back to Jack. If he answers, if not, I think it's,
I had a comment.
okay.
In the last paragraph,
Yeah,
where it talks about whether the Durham Historical Society ceased to exist or discontinued use of this land and buildings for its sole use. I thought when we were discussing it, we had the additional language of, and I'm drawing a blank, and I was trying to find it, and I couldn't find it, that if it stops, that it has to be open to the public, and if they cease having that open to the public time, then it would revert back to the town. And to me, that was an important aspect of this, because then the town still has the benefit of, here's this building that we've owned. And it's to me, it's a justification of, here's why we're giving it to you instead of selling it, and I think it's important. And that was language I thought was missing. I just have not been able to come up with the language.
Yeah, I was just looking here, so what if somewhere after if Durham Historical Society ceased to exist or discontinue use of this land and building for its sole use, comma, or, public, was it public value or public access was the language? Or public access ceased to exist, then property shall be reverted, because I get what you're saying, is so even if they're existing, but for some reason there's no more public use component.
so my understanding is, under the Durham Historical Society, it is open to the public.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that as long, the sole use portion here encapsulates that open to the public component.
Right, I mean, they're gonna do their thing, they're gonna have, whatever they bake sales or fundraisers, that's gonna allow the public to go in and see the artifacts, this, that, and the other. That's what they do, they put on those sort of programs. But if they stop using it, if the Historical Society ceased to exist or it's no longer used for the sole purpose of the Historical Society, then it reverts back to the town. I don't know.
I thought we had included language when we voted on it that said something along the lines of, I think I think when Tia came, she mentioned like at least once a month, they would have time where it was open to the public. And to me, that should be in this, because that, to me, was the grounds for doing this. Or not the grounds, but part of the reason why we can justify giving the building away.
So, if I can.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No,
I just picked the definition up of sole use means having complete control and ownership over something for a long time, using it for its intended purpose. So if the intended purpose was to keep it open to the public, if that's what their, I'll say their charter, loose words, their goal there, then
Yeah.
maybe Jack's use of that word might be okay, but I'd have to go back and look at, but I do remember that it needed to have that public content in it somehow.
So I'll go ahead.
But would it hurt to add that?
Well, that's what I was
clarification
just
in?
gonna get at, is I think that the intent here is to say that sole use includes all the things that we understand sole use to include, you know, public access, cause we had to make sure that there was public value in order for us to transfer it, right? And so we're kind of, it seems like our board is kind of tying some form of public access to being part of public value. And I think that if we just add in a line here that calls out the public access component, that would be important, because sometimes with these historic buildings, some people think that the public value might be limited to just its existence in general, because it is a value to the public to see it. So I just wanna make sure, not that I have concerns under our current board or the next board, but if, you know, leadership changes in both organizations, just wanna make sure that there is something in here, to Josh's point, that states and public access, you know. It might be a redundancy, because sole use might capture that, but,
Yeah, but I'd rather have it in there
Public
than not.
use through the historical society, right?
yeah.
well, what if they change their charter or whatever?
Yeah.
And say, you know, or, I mean, right, I mean, and then we're gonna have to come back.
If it changes use at all, it reverts back to the town.
Well, no, you're saying the use is the charter, and so they can amend the charter, right? They're gonna amend, presumably they're gonna make changes to it. So to me, I mean, in my mind, it was an important part of this. And I remember, I think it was Rich had raised the issue.
Yeah, several times.
So we're not getting confused with the use of public funds.
No, but, so, my understanding is that the way the board felt during our conversations was that some members tied the use of public funds to needing public value, and we all fell on that the building should have public access. And I see what you're saying, Josh, is essentially saying, if something changes with the charter, or something changes with, I feel like I got my back to you, Deb, sorry. If something changes with the charter, or something changes with the organization, they no longer feel that public access is an important part of that, we would not necessarily be comfortable with that. Whereas right now, there is a limit, at least like one of the third weekend days of the month, there's access to it or something like that. I just think that it wouldn't hurt to have a line in there that also explicitly calls out public access. So even if it said like, should the Durham Historical Society cease to exist or discontinue use of this land and building for its sole use, comma, or removal of public access, comma, then the property shall revert to the town of Durham. So that way, if the organization exists but says, we're not gonna let anyone else in the building besides chartered members anymore, we're saying, well, that's not part of the agreement, like there still needs to be a public access component. Am I encapsulating what you're getting at, Josh?
I'll call Jack and
Yeah.
his brain on that.
Because Joe might be right, Jack might say, well, that's what sole use is in there for. But I'm just thinking that for me to be more comfortable, if it's explicitly stated sole use and public access,
I agree.
I feel a little bit better.
I'll go back through my notes too, because I
Yeah.
may have it written somewhere. I know we talked about.
Yeah,
public
whether we
contact.
explicitly stated it or not, I know that everyone on the board at the time brought up some sort of public access component as being important.
It's public benefit.
Yeah, but I think that in addition to that, we tied public benefit to having some sort of public access component. Not necessarily 24-hour access or the same level of access of like Eureka Center, but there being a point where someone can say, I know that I do have the right to access that, to see it, even if it's, the third Saturday of the month from 10 to 12 or whatever.
Okay.
I also think on the first line of that same paragraph, it should say Durham Historical Society, not Durham Historical.
Yeah, go ahead and add it
Just-
right up, and I'll give it to me.
And then my other question is, there was been discussion about some of the items in the building belonging to the town. And, what are we doing about that?
Other historical items, I don't know, what's
I know,
the board
was it
do
the
about that?
pews
The
were mentioned?
content, yeah, I mean, the pews,
What does the board wanna do about it?
Well, I think we need to know what it is, and so.
Yeah,
Unless-
that's a good question, because the deed here is just conveying the building and the property, like the grounds, but not the contents, right?
Right.
And so I think that there was some discussion that we were saying that the contents would belong to the town of Durham, but the building would be where they're housed in an agreement with the Historical Society. I don't know if that gets called out here. But I think that that might be a different question. I think that this gives them the building and,
Right, we're just
The
transferring
grounds,
the property
yeah.
over, the contents is another,
yeah,
Right, but do we lose access to it when we transfer it?
through the historical society, they
Mhm.
own the building now.
Right, and they can we don't have access to what would then be our property inside their building.
Yeah,
right, I thought it was building and contents we were talking about on this, so, I think that the fear is that the Historical Society, not that they would do this, but they could sell the contents, which is worth value. There is value to that.
right.
So without taking an inventory of everything in there, because I'm sure some of it has come from various sources, but various sources donated it with the intent to leave it in the church. So there should probably be something mentioned in here about contents,
Okay, so this is gonna,
building and contents.
so if we do this, my fear is Jack will be done, maybe he'll stay on and do this, and this might take a little while to iron out, because I'm not even, did the contents get donated to the historical society, to the town, does anyone know
I think that
exactly
they
how
have
all
the
that
answer to
went?
that, because they
Yeah,
said that
they
they've
do.
done an inventory of the thing, of it, because I imagine some of it might be things that the town owned, and some of it might be someone's great-great-grandmother gave them this, and so they're, it makes me think of other museums where you go in and it might say, this is on loan from the town of Durham, this is on loan from, Joe Roy or whatever, and so just understanding where that is. But I don't know if this quitclaim deed is the space where you start talking about a historic dress or a hat or whatever.
It's not, but it's something that, should have been raised, it needs to be raised, I think, before we finalize this.
Okay,
And so my suggestion would be that, either we have a workshop and we meet over there with the Historic Society and we, talk about this issue. Or, like, it's the only thing I can come up with.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't think it's fair to put it on you, Jerry.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to put on Joe. I think it's something that the board needs to do, and we need to have an understanding of, here's where we can agree, what belongs to who, and here's where we can't, and we have to decide. If we decide that we're gonna donate it to the society, fine, but we need to have a plan going in when this happens, because that property then, is staying in the building, and, if the town is going to keep ownership of it, we need to do that before we transfer the building. or make clear that there's a dispute and then what do we do? I mean,
So,
it's
what do you
a
think?
lot of nothing, but it's, again, it's town property, so we have an obligation to the townsfolk to do something about it.
What do we think about getting this language changed so we add society next to Durham Historical, and then add in, I can give you this right here, then add in after sole use, comma, or public access is removed, comma, then the property shall revert to the town of Durham. We can add in that, but before we sign it and hand it over, we should probably meet with the Durham Historical Society and ask them to bring their inventory sheet or whatever they have to us, and we can have that discussion as part of, like, we're handing over the building, we're acknowledging that these are the contents that the town owns, that they're on loan, so we at least have a record. And, you know, if they say, well, we don't wanna hold them anymore, we would then figure out what we need to do with those. But I think what you're saying, Josh, is it's important because we're giving away, I mean, with approval of the town, we're giving away town property to this organization, but we wanna make sure we're only giving away what we talk to the town about, not necessarily those contents.
I also think the public use, it needs to be mentioned where you mentioned it, but it also should be mentioned earlier after the Durham Historical Society purposes and public access.
Just taking a look here real quick. So say the sole, used solely for the Durham Historical Society purposes and public access, comma, and that should the Durham Historical Society cease to exist or discontinue use of this land and building for its sole use, comma, or the public access is removed, then the property shall revert to the town of Durham. So I've sketched that on this. I'll hand that over to you. Oh, sorry, just. And I guess what we need then for the turnaround time here is to have the lawyer look at that, might be his final task with us. And do we want to add approving, I hate to keep adding things to the agenda, but do we want to add approving the quick deed to carry that old business over to next meeting as well? And do we want to invite the Durham Historical Society to that meeting to review this with them and ask those sorts of questions about property?
They should start the conversation.
Yeah. Cool, so,
Do we have any concerns that this was done without a title search, or was there no risk there? Deed prepared without title search by this office?
Yeah, we gave them the title to the,
Oh, okay, so it's no background data.
so I'll add this to the June 11th meeting.
I think that risk falls on the society, not on us. So,
we gave them the.
yeah, that's,
deed.
so that's something. But I think you'll send a copy of this once it's approved to Tia, because she's got to.
Once we get the final verbiage down, then that's when I'll send it to the Historical Society, once it's, because I don't want to send it to them now, then it changes, and then, you know what I mean? So, once we have an approved, you like it, language.
But,
I think for the town record keeping, it would be good to have the, the whole thing wrapped up, which includes the content list and the acknowledgement that that's still owned by the town. Not that it's part of this, but just when we kind of cross the finish line on this topic, that we close that.
you're saying close the door to the
Yes,
chapter, yeah, I
So
agree.
we're gonna have to get that content list from the Historical Society.
Yeah, maybe she can.
I'm
send
almost
you-
certain they have it already, because
Yeah.
I think Tia has mentioned multiple times that they have that all pulled together. And so if you could email them ASAP and just say, at the June 11th meeting, we're gonna review quitclaim deed language, but could you please also send a representative so we can get it with an inventory of the content, so we know what belongs to the town and what belongs to really, all our concern is what belongs to the town in terms of anything outside of the building or the grounds.
Is there gonna be a field visit, or are we doing all of it right here?
I'm fine with doing it here.
All right here, okay.
I would say if they have a list, we should get that early.
Yeah.
Send a list of what's in there.
I
If
agree.
there was a public, if she told us the public hours of legislature, we could walk over if we
Yeah.
wanted to.
And I'm almost certain they have this information already, but I think, like you're saying, it's really important to dot the i's and cross the t's here, so we understand. It's like when you buy a house and you show up and there's a lawnmower in the garage, you're like, is this mine? Did you leave it here on purpose? You know?
Yeah, and I don't think this is gonna be an issue. I just think we just need to document it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, I think we all talked about this publicly before, so it's just a matter of crossing the Ts and dotting the Is.
Yeah, and that's also good for them too, because
Yeah.
then we're all on the same page, so
Yep.
no one from the town, a future iteration of the board saying, hey, you need to give us back all this stuff in there, and they're saying, well, only half of it's yours, half of it we got elsewhere, so should just keep everyone happy, or at least try to. All right. Was that a exclamation of joy? Scared me there, Josh. Alrighty, discussion and award property discussion and award of property reevaluation company. Does anyone wanna start, what they thought? We had 2 respondents, which I think was a little fewer than we expected. We had, what is it, KLT or KRT, and then we had Deergo. KRT being the larger of the 2 firms, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Did anyone have any thoughts on it? Joe, did you get a chance to review? Or?
I reviewed it all
Yeah.
and also looked at your Q&A you guys
Yep.
had with them. I mean, KRT seems to me like the front runner. I was a little more concerned about Dorigo, not having the I'll say the depth of folks. The time to get this done. I'm nervous about the schedule when you start backing it up against, going to the town and saying we wanna change the calendar year, to a different schedule for taxes and for the way the town operates. So I felt better with KRT based on both their proposal and their presentation and,
Yeah.
it was interesting to me, just the IT input into it. It's kind of, although Trio, I know everybody uses it, and that's what we use and stuff, but it's too bad you can't get that data in a different format to have it be more accessible by the public. But it seems like, that's what we use, so that's what we're sticking with. But, I think having this, I'm kind of like, the old school with the little cards is interesting to me, but I'd like to move forward at some point, and so doing it with little cards again makes me think I'm going backwards. But it seems like that's the only way to really do it without changing our whole software system, so that's kind of a different animal. But I'll just throw that out there, that, I was looking for something, I think Deb brought it up during the conversation about data, how the data gets entered and brought in. It seems like very manual entry, which is liable to have mistakes in it. So, didn't seem like a data dump to me.
Deb or Josh,
Otherwise,
did you-
both companies were the same in that department. I didn't see any difference, but.
They had quite a bit of difference in their rate, wasn't it? About 50K or something, was it?
One was 190, the other was 220, 30K.
But fortunately for us, we've already raised and appropriated enough for either one of those. So both of them fall within our budget, which is nice.
I don't think we could go wrong with either one of them, but I was actually leaning towards the smaller organization.
Interesting. Josh?
I agree with
I
you,
never
Kate.
got a gut feel of that.
With you can't go wrong. My idea was just to throw them and pick one, like, I mean,
Okay.
I see the benefits of the bigger, I also like the smaller, so I
Yeah,
didn't wanna make that decision.
I'm leaning more towards KRT personally for some of the same reasons that you brought up, Joe. I kind of get that same vibe. In this case, I do generally I'm always like really looking at the smaller business, but in this case, I do like the idea of a company that has a larger footprint in terms of their back end staff that they can have help out with things. That's an important thing to me. And I also just think that there's some of the process that I think that we are most comfortable with. KRT said was already their basic standard approach of reaching out ahead of time with certain groups, giving you an idea of who's going to be where, and then some of their electronic data collection and some of their enhanced technology seems a little bit more towards what makes me comfortable. So I'm leaning more towards the KRT side of things, personally. And so they're both within our budgeted rate. I like the bid details from KRT a little bit more.
Oh, for sure.
It was more comprehensive.
The proposal package was much more
Yeah.
comprehensive, of course.
And so that's where I fall.
My question would be, it's $30,000, which in the grand scheme of things isn't much,
Mhm.
but it is a number. Was the difference?
Yeah, is it that much of a difference of
That was
performance?
the
Well,
only question.
Part of what I looked at with one of them is like even just postage. KRT covers all the postage components of it, and whereas the other firm would expect us to cover that. And I'd have to check with you, Jerry, but I imagine that our postal budget would get blown pretty quickly there. I mean, that's just an additional cost that we'd have to,
We could plan on that,
yeah.
though.
But it seemed like a few things were à la carte, I'll call it, with the smaller organization. Everything wasn't up front. So I'm still thinking the cost bogey's gonna shrink really quick.
Yeah.
In between them, and I think you'd end up spending about the same money when you're all said and done. And the depth of the other organization. The other folks have full-time jobs as town managers and what have you. I'm not sure that, I didn't get the warm fuzzy watching it that they were, they certainly weren't gonna get it done as fast. And I didn't see the rigor in them getting it. There was no benefit for them to get it done in the time frame we need it done, even though there's a contract and everything. And you're gonna be paying the lawyers to get them to get the contract done. And again, one of them drops off the face of the earth for some reason, then you're down to two people. And it bothered me. There's a lot more depth in the other company.
Yeah, that's the thing. The depth thing was a big issue for me because I just know that this is going to be a very stressful process for the members of the community. People coming in and going to be here a long time, knocking on doors, figuring out what's going on with everyone's house and that sort of stuff. So I really like the idea of that depth, especially because I do get concerned if about the timeline. If there's something arises and somebody can't make it, you have that backup with the other firm. I like their KRT's proposal more. It seemed more in depth, and it kind of, like you said, Joe, it just felt like they're utilizing, I think about the trajectory for town, and we're trying to get more detail oriented, more electronic, more focused on that sort of stuff, and I felt like KRT was a bit better fit for me for that sort of stuff. And even though we use Trio and KRT uses something else, from talking with our assessor, it sounds like at the meeting they were saying that was a really good product as well. So it seems like there's good stuff there, and it seems like their quote encapsulates every bit of the cost without, like you said, that kind of wiggle factor. So that's where I fall on it. So KRT would be my preference, but.
I'd move that we award the property revaluation to KRT.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? All right, seeing none. Cool. Alrighty. New business, or is it, there's no additional old business, so new business. Oh, sorry, I just totally, so, yeah, GP cog town facility study. We have Matt and George here tonight to talk about that a little bit. Everyone should have this little packet in their pamphlet. Alrighty.
Well, I'll kick it off.
Yep.
As you know, the town has been looking at the possibility of getting a grant for a study of this area, which would include the town office property, the Little League field, the Eureka Center, and this property that we're in tonight, to do some kind of a visioning process for this. And GP Cog has agreed to provide services, consultant services for the project as part of the membership services that the town gets from GP Cog. Your packet did include a scope and schedule for the project, as well as a visualization of the existing conditions, which would be the starting place in terms of the visioning process. We look at in depth at what's here now, kind of get a picture of what it looks like and what it could look like in the future is the typical tour visioning process. One of the components to be looked at as part of this proposal is to look at pedestrian connections between all these facilities. I know working at the town office, if there's a meeting over here, I and most other employees probably get in their cars to come over here because there's not really safe pedestrian access on this busy road. And so looking at connections between the ball field, Eureka, the town offices, this building, as well as you would include connections to the school to really make this whole area interconnected. Another topic that's been discussed recently is the need for putting a foundation under the Eureka Center. And if that does go forward, then moving that building onto a foundation further away from the intersection would give our MDOT opportunity to reconfigure that for safety purposes and function either as a T or as possibly a roundabout. They'd probably look at what the different options are and benefits and costs of each. So that would be another traffic-related, pedestrian-related part of this study. Associated with that on the traffic front is the parking. This is now the primary public meeting space, and just tonight, with a limited audience, if there's a function of the fire department or an emergency, at the same time that there's a major public meeting here, there's some potential conflict issues. And I understand that this is a temporary situation in terms of this being used, the town's primary meeting space, but part of the goal of this project and process would be to come up with, what are the options and what is the direction for the future in terms of the use of this facility for public meeting space. And similarly, the parking lot across the street, I've been to many meetings at Eureka in the winter. You come out and it's pitch black. It seems like a simple solution to fix it, but it's been years. And that really raises another issue, is that most of the improvements to these properties have been done usually in a crisis response on a hit or miss basis. So part of what could come out of this process would be to have a comprehensive list of all of the maintenance needs of these buildings, and then be able to put that into some kind of a CIP process to come up with a plan for getting this stuff done. Prioritize what is the most important. So that could be part of this process to look at maintenance needs and improvements that could be done over time, and then start planning for those through budgets and other processes. And then beyond those practical, limited needs, it could be an opportunity really for a visioning of what this area could look like and what it should look like, say, 20, 30 years from now, as the town continues to grow. So I just kind of saw that there's an opportunity right across the street here between the Eureka and the town offices, kind of envision a small park, like you have a river park, and then, possibility of gazebo, picnic tables, a playground, and then, when families are at the ball field, younger kids can come over and play at the playground while the older kids are engaged in baseball. So there's, just what are the options? I've, participated and organized these types of visioning processes. You don't come in with a set of, here's what we want to do. You come in and say, look, sometimes you can get some very creative ideas come out of this process that nobody ever thought about. And then just, see where that goes and what kind of process there is. So you could come up with kind of a long-range vision. This is kind of the center of the town. These are the major town facilities, and what does the future hold for it? And get input from the public. So one of the decision points for you folks would be how to approach this project. Matt and I would be kind of the primary staff people to serve this, but you typically would get some kind of a steering committee, which could be done on an ad hoc basis, where in either town officials appointed, but also you could look at forming it from the stakeholders. So for example, someone from the town hall staff, someone from the fire department, someone from Eureka Center, the school district, the Little League, neighborhood property owners that are going to be affected by whatever happens here in the future. So you could look at some sort of an ad hoc steering committee for the process, because that would be very important, because certainly you don't want staff coming in and saying, here are the recommendations. It's much better if you could have a citizen-driven process, and that would be very important. So that's kind of my setting the stage for the discussion, and then Matt is going to go over the details of their proposal to do the process.
Can I
Yeah, let's
ask
hop
you-
in with questions real
I
quick.
just, so, my question, well, two. One is, can this encompass, like, putting trees back in front of the town office? Because when they're gone, I don't like it. And two, we put all these things over here a couple weeks ago, a lot of which you're gonna be involved with.
Yeah.
Is this gonna take, how much time is this gonna take, and are you gonna be able to accomplish or help with everything? I feel like almost everything that happens in town,
Town planner.
we're throwing at
Jerry,
your
the town
feet.
planner, yeah.
And we're always, someone is always saying how busy you are, and how there's only one of you.
Yeah.
George is saying that.
Well, no, I think he's the only one who hasn't said it, is the problem.
This is why this guy's here.
Okay, okay. That was, the whole thing I'm listening
Yeah.
is just, how much is this gonna put on your
Yeah,
shoulders?
Jerry has kind of asked me to just kind of coordinate and manage this. It's almost like the codification and remember the digitizing of the tax maps? Okay, I put limited time into that, but I put in some important strategic controls and accountability and guidance. So that's kind of where I can fit that stuff in. If I were doing everything that's in, that wouldn't work. But he's gonna be doing all the heavy lifting on this.
I felt like somebody had to ask that question.
Hey,
just 'cause-
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Matt.
introduce myself, Matt Panfill, Planning Director for Greater Portland Council of Governments, or GPCOG. We are the regional planning organization in which Durham is located. Full disclosure, I am a Durham resident, 2 miles down the road, so I'm even closer than the attorneys are. But GPCOG does, they're signed with being the transportation planning agency for the area, but also does land use planning, economic development, and sustainability. In my role as planning director, particularly land use, some of the things we're looking at where we would be of assistance is in concept plan development, maybe concept plans for streets, improvements, things like that. I want to make it clear it would be the town's plan. We're not coming in with an agenda or anything like that. We're providing technical assistance, meeting facilitation assistance, things like that. Public outreach if needed, survey, that kind of work. We can do that. Also, as a Durham resident, I've approached my boss and the organization about being able to contribute my time in a volunteer capacity to whatever extent possible. I've been here 5 years, haven't really been involved in the community yet as Director of Planning Development at Brunswick, and most of my evenings were spoken for. So in this capacity, And obviously, there's details that would need to be worked out, but I do feel a sense of civic duty to contribute some of my time as well. So.
We never want to turn down anyone's sense of civic duty if it's popping up, because as Josh said, there's a lot of things. So if you can't do it on this, I'm sure we can find something else for you if you're interested. Cool. So I had a couple questions about this, but I want to let you all ask questions first if you have any burning questions here. I'll go. So this is obviously a grant proposal, right? It will be for a grant to get a lot of this work done?
No, it's
No?
actually already approved.
Oh, sorry.
Through GPCOG
Okay.
Member Services.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
this is just,
But one point of this is that I mentioned the potential benefits from it. If the town is in an opportunity to apply for like DOT funding for various improvements, then having this visioning plan can be part of the basis for making that application.
and so this is included in our services we get from GPCOG, and it would involve this deliverable of a plan and kind of a vision without additional cost, but would that also maybe incorporate some estimates of what sort of stuff might cost to do for planning? I'm just thinking for planning purposes, if we get this great plan and it comes to us and we want to bring it to the voters and say, here are things we want to do now that we've got this great plan, is there a cost estimate, or are those determined a little later?
It would be rough. I mean, we're talking again, when you say vision, it's kind of concept level. What this does, and I'll mention specifically, Maine DOT has a Village Partnership Initiative. That's, once you have a vision plan, you can start applying for like grants under different, I think they have like, I forget how they divide it, but that's when you're kind of grant eligible to get some funds through Maine DOT. So the vision is kind of like the first part to get there.
Okay.
Once you have that, you kind of bring it to them, say, look, we're planning for our future. We're asking for, X, Y, or Z grant. So that, I think that is the importance of this type of document. I think as far as cost estimates, you're not going to get like something that's going to out to bid.
Yeah.
But ballpark understanding of, you want this type of amenity, there's this general associated increase with that. There are estimations for parking costs.
Yeah.
I'll-
That's all I'm wondering is,
Yeah.
obviously it's not going to be, here's an exact estimate, but something ballpark just for us to wrap our heads around. But what I'm hearing here, which I really like, is you're saying that there are certain grant opportunities that are only available after you get a vision plan like this.
Yeah, I mean, there might be others out there, but, I know specifically of the village, I'm thinking specifically, State Roads Village Partnership Initiative is designed for small towns and rural planning, so,
Yeah.
It seems like that would be a recommendation, not to get too far.
I would caution against looking at cost estimates as any part of this for a couple of reasons. First, if people aren't in favor of the concept, then, spending time doing calculations is really not very productive. And secondly, and maybe more importantly, is that people tend to grab onto numbers. And so if you say, this parking lot or these improvements, this pedestrian system is gonna be in the ballpark of 100,000, and then it ends up 5 years later, you go forward and actually do the project with inflation and everything, and now it's 175,000, or it wasn't really fully designed to know
Yeah, I
the
understand,
harder
yeah.
costs. So I think at this point of visioning, it would probably be more important to just talk about the concepts and then just see what parts of it have any traction in terms of public support, and then go to the next step of starting to look more detailed at it.
I
So
agree.
there's no town expense at all here, except maybe for some of your time, George?
Right.
Yeah, because like what I hear is limited town expense and then opening opportunities to potentially get additional funds after you develop this. And for me, what's important is there's all these grant opportunities out there which are funded already by, tax dollars that everyone's paying in. So if there's opportunities to get more of everyone's tax money back into Durham and working for us in Durham, that's really great. And so if this is the step there, and you bring up important things, because I've often thought about this, it's like we're all co-located with our buildings here, but like you said, it's like you feel like Frogger if you're trying to cross the road over here to here, and then it's like there's no trail in the woods between the Eureka Center and the ball field and all that, and we already see people playing in the in the parking area or the grass that we use as a parking area. So I think it's a good vision for our community to maintain that like village rural aesthetic, but have, you know, a good space. So I'm all for it personally. Joe?
So you've got the area marked off here, but as my understanding, this is gonna include looking at the town garage as well, space?
No, it would just be this triangle.
It would be just this triangle, so it's
Yeah.
the geographic area, the triangle
Right.
ends at the school, or it includes the school?
Probably just the town properties. Now, obviously, interconnections with the schools and some of the surrounding neighbors would be something that would be looked at.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was.
Yeah, no, it's just the triangle.
Just the triangle, okay.
And I too want to clarify, because I thought I heard like this was part of GPCOG's like general services. Oh, this is a grant that we filled out.
Mhm.
It's, we had grant money last year through Maine DOT, that's distributed through us to that, which we completed some of the background mapping, existing conditions, did some background study. The remainder of this would fall under member services or my time.
Oh. So that 8,000 was,
Nearly all of it, yeah. It wasn't eligible to be carried over, so.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
I think we kind of did or my understanding was there was a pause in the process, and we kind of left it at, I did the existing conditions work, and then we were gonna resume. But the scope of what's left is, to me, comfortable to be covered by general member services.
Oh, okay, I agree.
It would be something that would be, you know, right up our alley that would fall under member
Okay.
services.
Cool. What are next steps?
Well, as I mentioned, the possibility of forming some kind of a steering committee, get direction from you folks on that so that we can understand how we're gonna move forward. And Matt is in the scope, has laid out meetings with various stakeholders, and like such as the planning board, the Eureka Center, other groups to begin to just make them aware of the project, and then schedule later in the summer some public meetings on it. So we really need to get the thing rolling, and part of what we're looking at is to try to conclude this thing in time for the next budget cycle, so that if there are grants that are available and there are matching shares, we can understand what that's gonna look like and get that into the next cycle.
It's May. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but we wanted to start out with you folks, kind of get your understanding of what we're gonna be doing, and again, get some assistance from you in terms of the leadership of this project.
Yeah. You all have any other questions or comments?
Well, I guess I'm just I'll say, I don't want to use the word concern, but part of the scope here is to look at the nearby developed neighborhoods and potential future residential housing and mixed-use buildings. So that's why I'm asking about the triangle wouldn't include any of that. That's why so is the steering committee gonna be formed to go look at, say, how to put a Connect Patriot Way, I'll say, all the way through back to 136, and then grid up this area of town to put that type of housing in, putting maybe another road behind the school? Or is this just looking, only because that's what the scope says,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the scope.
And, you know, this is again where my involvement in the process gets some ground testing on some of this stuff. So, you know, this is typical GPCOG and other regional planning agency approaches to these types of projects, which tend to be much larger scale. But at the same time, as you're doing this, you don't want to just stay within the road. You want to look at what's next to it. Are there neighborhoods? Is there developed, like the big corner piece down here? What's the future of that property? You wouldn't necessarily get into planning that, but recognize there's a potential there for subdivision or commercial. How should these properties be, and when they do the intersection, For example, where would the curb cut be for that, and make sure it doesn't interfere. So generally, you see how it interconnects and fits, but you don't say, okay, now we're gonna do a master plan for that piece.
But is that what you want the committee to go do?
No, the committee would just go along with everything that, the process, and then, like, it's always important whenever you have a public meeting, as you well know, to have, members of the community kind of being the spokespeople and the advocates, and we're there to assist them, as opposed to a town staff or a regional planner coming in and facilitating it. So that's the kind of input the steering committee, and then when you're all said and done, they're the ones that decide, okay, what are we gonna come in with our final report and recommendation to the select board?
So my understanding there is, like, looking at those abutting resources might be just feeding into exploratory options. So, hey, this is our design here, knowing that right next door is vacant but is zoned to allow commercial and allow residential. So maybe there's a slightly different modification to a roundabout, knowing that there could be a commercial use or whatever. So it kind of feels more just like, if we're looking at this triangle, we should look what's next door as well.
Yeah, and also, it's like, with one of these processes we did down in Falmouth with they had an old vacant Shop and Save that had sat there for 15 years, and one of the things that came out of the visioning was to say, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had some cinemas, so we wouldn't have to go to the mall, and they ended up pursuing, and somebody came in and put cinemas in there. So in terms of this context, like, let's just say that there is that, I think it's 6 or 8 acres on the corner there, and if people in the process talked about, wow, wouldn't it be great to have a small coffee shop or something, then you might just come up with an idea for some of those that you could then go to the property owner who happens to own the Get and Go, and just say, look, we had a public process, there's some community interest, here's some thoughts that came out of this, as opposed to, we're gonna develop a plan for that.
And you never know, again, the public feedback's so important. It might be, we want this to be preserved or conserved, something like that. So once we have an idea, again, it's not gonna get to the level of detail of densities or showing, any sort of housing, further concept plans, but yeah, you're acknowledging the area and what it might represent in relation to this. Again, if that's not amenable, then, we kind of say, next step, one of our recommendations is next step is maybe take a look at that area. But I would think it's worthwhile getting public input on, broadly speaking, again, we're talking high level vision, the future of that area.
So from us, you just need a thumbs up and feedback on what we want our steering committee for this to look like.
That's right.
Yeah, so I'm just seeing here you've mentioned kind of key interests in the area based off of who's within the triangle and who's adjacent to it. So, talking to folks from the Budget Committee, Planning Board, School District, Little League, Fire Station, in the town office and Eureka Center, I think that's important. I would imagine a few community voices being involved there as well. I don't know if that would look like us putting out a call to the town to say, is anyone interested in being part of this visioning experience, you can say it, and at least get 2 or 3 people there. Or do you think that there's value in literally looking at the direct neighbors and knocking on the door and saying, hey, we're doing a visioning experience for the town center and you're own a property adjacent to it. Do you want to give feedback?
Yeah, and again, based on other projects that I've worked on, these types of situations, the neighbors are gonna be the most impacted by it.
Yeah.
And getting someone from their constituency involved in the process can save you a lot of grief in the long run.
You may even consider, and I don't want to put more anything more, but especially a meeting with just neighbors or individually. I think once they understand what the purpose and intent is, there would be more comfort level that we're
To that point, so what if the way it worked is we agreed to this list of key folks and then put out a call to get a couple people who wanted to participate, but also build in a system there where the first meeting you have is kind of informing the neighbors. And if that meeting leads with folks who now want to be involved, there's still the opportunity for them to get, you see what I'm saying? So if we build this ad hoc committee, open it up, say, hey, do 3 people from the community want to volunteer for this? You could then host your first meeting with the neighbors and say, do any of you want to be on this, and making sure we're making space for those people who are most impacted. Now, obviously, if every single person from, you know, a 1 mile radius wants to join this, we'd have to put in some qualifiers there. But it's one of those things is sometimes I feel like we do these initiatives and then people who are most impacted maybe didn't pay attention up front to everything that was being talked about around them, and then they feel like they're kind of backed in a corner at the very end. So to avoid that, saying, we're going to talk to you all up front, please let us know if you want to join. Do you see something like that working out?
Well, I would look for the steering committee to kind of talk about that in terms of what neighbors would be impacted the most, and which ones should we be sure to include. And then if you want to expand it beyond that, certainly with an outreach you can do that. But as far as the steering committee and direct involvement of neighbors, I think it's going to be a more limited scope. Maybe the houses on either side of this building, and the you know, the next neighborhood over. Those are who are going to be most impacted and have the most benefit from it potentially.
How big do you think the steering committee would be?
Well, there's a list right there of potential
Oh,
representatives.
that's your steering committee.
Yeah, I'm thinking representatives from those various groups would be important, particularly town offices, you know, there's the staff that's there, the people in this building, the Eureka Center, you know, and again, we're just talking maybe a representative from each of those groups.
And I have a quick nuts and bolts question on that. So if there's someone from the town office is going to be on this, would that be counting towards work time, or would that be more of a volunteer time, after hours kind of thing? I just want to make sure we understand that. Because like we know if you're working on it, it's part of your job. But if we have someone from the town office working on it,
I think Jessica's volunteer.
I saw her hand go up. So I just want to make sure, you know, I just, because, you know,
Yeah, that
we
would
all
have to be
sit in these
clarified.
very long meetings
Yeah.
and it turns into I mean, as it is, some days Jessica's like, yeah, this was a 14-hour day for me, you know, and they just don't want to be like, hey, as part of your job, here's several hours of unpaid labor, you know. I think our lawyers might not like that once they.
Or would that be true if you had someone from the fire department?
That's was my next question too, is if we build in, and that's maybe more of a personnel discussion.
I think you have to make it clear that it's a volunteer to help make this area, because it will theoretically, I think, help, you know, getting around.
I get that, but I do get a little nervous around, well, I don't know, around laws when your employer offers you the opportunity to volunteer at work in addition to your normal. I know, like, in my organization, that wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
Well, but they may be volunteering as a resident, even though they work in the town, you know, in the office.
What if they're not
I
around?
think if we wanted to get everyone's input from all these areas, talk about maybe interviewing people, or maybe that interviewing process should be done on company time, so to speak. And I would envision the steering committee would be taking that input and maybe a smaller group. Like
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe someone from the
point.
select board, someone from the planning, you know, just a smaller team, and bring all that input that you heard from all of those areas to the steering.
That's a really good point. So what are you envisioning is like, if we have this larger steering committee, but they're going to talk to someone from the town office during work hours to get their input, and then bring it to, if there's an evening meeting or something like
Yeah,
that.
if you're more comfortable with that, this is one practical reason. We could just keep this list as stakeholder groups to be contacted, as opposed to.
Sorry, what was that?
We could, if you're bringing up some very good points about concerns for the constitution of the steering committee. And this list that was provided was an idea that Jerry and I kind of threw together just to say, okay, who would you want on it? But you could go in a different direction as far as that is concerned, and just do your call out to the community who's interested in serving on this steering committee, and then keep this list as just stakeholders groups to be contacted and involved in the process.
Yeah, I kind of,
The customer, so to speak.
I like that
Yep.
idea a little bit more, just because I get really nervous around like,
Sure.
you're allowed to volunteer for work. I was like, it's a little,
And if there were any like that, you could drop them off the list. too.
Yeah, I just don't want anyone feeling pressured to give up their valuable free time to
Absolutely.
contribute towards their workplace, because that's really tough for a work-life balance.
And just to clarify, I will be charging my time.
Yeah, George, would you like to volunteer for 10 hours a week?
I'm not 2 miles
Well,
away.
I think that it would be great to pull together a steering committee, and then make sure that they're engaging with these primary stakeholders here. One thing that I am seeing on here that we have talked about before, but we haven't ever done is like, it says here a select board liaison. And so I know that we've talked about, especially in our new rules that we adopted, we have a set list of like boards and committees that select board members cannot be members of, in addition to being on the select board. But we did talk about this whole liaison concept where one person does represent, not necessarily represent the views of the select board, but brings the aura of the select board to the meeting to say, this is this kind of stuff that, we want to keep an eye on. Is that something we want to incorporate here, or just have us as a select board remain primary stakeholders in the discussion?
I would volunteer to be part of the steering committee.
Oh, then we're done. That works for me. If you're volunteering to do that.
If that's what if we
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm just thinking is that I just think not necessarily have someone be there, but like I think about like on the Conservation Commission, there's a meeting that Joe and I were there, and someone just had a process question, and with someone from the select board being there, they can say, oh, the board would need to know X, Y, and Z, and then we're not giving an opinion, but the board would need to know X, Y, and Z if you wanted to do that. So I think that it does give a good contact and helps keep us informed. So if you're willing to take on that role, I'd say that we could have you be the select board
Yeah, I would
liaison.
volunteer as a community member.
Oh,
in the
us
fact-
select
and-
board, we can
and the-
volunteer as much as
and
we
the
want.
fact
It
that
doesn't.
You're on the select board, that's just
Yeah.
a bonus maybe.
Yeah,
I like the idea, and I think there's a lot of good stuff here.
cool. Well, I don't want to carry this on any more than we have to here. I'm comfortable with this list and with putting out a call for volunteers for some steering committee members. Is that something we can get out on the town website and through the, and through the normal means? And then I really just want us to make sure we're engaging with the direct neighbors, even if there's just a subset of like, I'm not, maybe as far as knocking on doors, just because this feels very much, you're talking about doing what in my backyard, and I want to make sure that those folks are engaged really early on, so no one ever feels like it's dropped on them in the end. So that's just my big takeaway from some of our other planning processes as well. So, and glad to hear we have a planner in town who lives 2 miles away from the town office and wants to.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna regret saying that, or, but, no, yeah, I
Hey,
mean.
can you please list your personal cell phone number into the microphone? No, I'm kidding.
Unlisted.
Well, perfect. Do you feel like you have what you need from us, George
We
and
do.
Jerry?
Thank you.
Okay.
This is exciting stuff. All right. We have to authorize and sign the codification contract next.
Yeah, or just give me authorization to sign it and I'll sign it tomorrow.
That works for me.
That's all I need.
I make a motion to allow Jerry to sign the codification contract.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? None? We got a mower situation, it sounds like.
Yeah, so Public Works is looking to get another mower.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you have the bid, she's got the bid tab. So it's one of the lower bid, and he has a mower now, but it's pretty beat up that he's using mostly for the cemeteries. It's a smaller one that he can use for them. He just is looking to get another one.
Mm-hmm.
The one that he's currently using is on the replacement schedule. I guess it's pretty beat up. There's some duct tape holding on some parts. So he just wants authorization to be able to purchase that mower to do the other properties.
Is this about the price that it came in at?
Yeah. The
That
top one.
meaning the one that, on the replacement schedule? Was
Yes.
this without the,
I think it's lower.
lower than what the replacement
Yes.
schedule had in there for?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this would replace the existing
It's
mower?
not replacing it, it's gonna be in addition to.
Okay,
The one that he has now is a little bit smaller and it's
Mhm.
falling apart that he's gonna dedicate to the cemetery. Cemeteries can be pretty rough on mowers,
yeah.
so he's gonna probably put it out of its misery using it at the cemetery.
Okay, so it's still gonna get some use out of it,
Yeah,
yeah,
he's still gonna
No
get some
pun
use out of
intended,
it.
huh?
yeah,
But he would like to get a new one to be able to do a nicer job on
Yeah.
other properties.
and just to clarify here, so obviously we're seeing here the preferred bid is the lowest bid.
Yes.
Did Calvin feel pressure to just go with the absolute lowest bid, or is
no.
this what he feels is the best fit for the
That's
job?
what he feels is the best mower for them,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Is this already part of his budget, or we?
Yeah, it's all, it's part of his,
His budget.
yeah, we socked money away for it in his capital reserve this
Mhm.
year, actually.
Yeah, I remember when we did the flat funding of capital reserve, I know it was right before you joined the board. I remember seeing that the mower was listed as something that was gonna need to be replaced in the short term, so, if it's under budget, that's always good too.
Yeah, and his pickup truck too was up too, but we've talked about that, we're gonna wait another year.
Mhm.
It has a sticker until March, so if you.
Oh, I'd never get rid of a truck with a
Right,
sticker.
Right, exactly, you might as well run that truck through the salt this winter than buy a new one.
Yeah.
But eventually we'll have to look at that, I mean, it is starting to rust out.
Yeah.
I think it's a better use of,
But this shows the strength of this planning process right here,
Right.
because in the past, we would have to say, buying a new truck, and now you're saying, hey, let's really push
this
it a little
one.
bit further, so.
Exactly.
But-
And, and if the rear end comes out, falls out of that truck, then we can come back to
Mhm.
the board and say, look, now we've got bigger issues, but that's not the case right now.
Yeah.
That truck will work, I mean, and what we're doing now, he has a new mechanic, so what they're doing now is they've had a spreadsheet with all their equipment. So anytime they work on it, they're tracking how much money they're putting into it. Cause that's always a good sign to know
Yeah.
when you need to maybe unload something. If you're putting more money into it than it's worth,
Yeah.
then maybe it's time to do
Yeah.
that, so.
Makes me think of old beater vehicles in high school. If you're spending all weekend, every weekend fixing it, might be time for, if you gotta work on it for 2 days to get 5 days out of it, might be time to replace it. But I'm happy to hear they're tracking that
So,
sort of stuff.
It's time to track that now, it's time to look at these things a little bit more.
Cool.
Closer eyes, so.
So do we have a motion to approve the Yurzax?
Make a motion
Tiger
to, approve the replacement of the mower, or additional mower here, that's in the, current, CIP plan.
Second.
Any discussion? Any, all in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none? Perfect. Cool. Alrighty, the next thing is the RSU board vacancy. As you can see, we have an email that Jessica has printed off from us from Michelle Richardson from the school board. Sounding like the recently elected, school board representative from Durham has had a change in, ability to fill the role, and it will no longer be able to fill the role. So Jerry, could you provide us with a little guidance as to what the process looks like?
Yeah,
So for folks at home can
So
hear?
the process is going to be very similar, to fill that seat, it's gonna be very similar to how you fill other board and committee seats. So we'll have to make an announcement that there's a school board member seat available, and we will have them pick up an application at the clerk's office, they can fill that out, and then we'll give those, applications to you, and then you decide when you appoint.
Mm-hmm. And so
Just
we,
have to decide on how long you want to give people to decide if they wanna run or not,
Mhm.
fill out an application, and what meeting you want to appoint. Do you wanna interview them, how do you want to do that, but
Yeah.
that's the process, it's very similar to appointing any other board or committee member.
and so we don't have a set process for the amount of days that this needs to be open.
No.
Do we have a precedence that we've used in the past?
No, but Michelle said that, they're not meeting in,
Till August.
yeah,
You've
till
got plenty
August,
of
they have a
time.
retreat in August, they'd like the new person to attend, and then they'll start their, so you do have some time.
Do you know when that retreat is?
I'd have to check. I
So,
think it's about
if-
in August.
If we wanna work backwards, maybe we wanna say we should pick a no later than date, so they would be doing something in August. We would wanna have something appointed. I'm just looking at our schedule, and we have a lot of stuff coming up, and I think this is an important process that we need to go through. So I'm thinking if we say no later than the July 23rd meeting, we need to have someone approved, and we can work back from there. Now, is this retreat like a thing, Jessica, do you know?
Just like a meeting, they discuss, I believe, probably their goals and priorities.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so July 23rd seems like the no later than date for me. And I like the idea of posting this for at least 2 weeks, if not 3 or 4. And then building the opportunity for us to talk to any of the people who have filled out an application. Now, would that discussion happen in an open session, or would that be, okay, yep. And so, what do you all think?
We'd have to do interviews on the 26th of June at the latest,
Or 25th is our,
or, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
25th, sorry. I'm looking
you
at
know,
this.
no worries,
And, because then you'd want to make a decision on, say, either the 9th.
yeah, cause if we did that, Joe, you're right, if we did the 25th, and then we make our decision on July 9th.
Say, yeah, shoot
And
for
so,
that.
that, if the 23rd is our end date, last possible,
Yeah.
we can make our decision for July 9th. And so, interview,
I'm out of town on the 25th, so I won't be at that meeting, but that's okay.
So, my thought process might be slightly different.
that's fine, let's hear
And
it.
that was, we set an end date, we announce the candidates, and then we, as a select board, sort of host like a candidates night. And that way, because I know there was a comment about public input,
Mhm.
and so that might be a way to sort of address. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna address the issue that was raised tonight, but it will at least allow there to be public input and comment, for people who are interested.
Like a meet the
So-
candidates kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Jessica, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanna let you guys know, so this, whoever you appoint will serve until the next municipal election.
Mm-hmm,
And then at that election, we'll be electing 2 school board
mm-hmm.
people. And the rest of that term for this position would be 2 years. So
Yep,
whoever
so
you appoint
this
now will just
Who we are,
last
so what you're saying is who we're appointing only serves until the municipal election,
in April.
in April.
2025. Correct.
and then they may or may not decide to run, but we will have 2 positions open. And this is a portion of one of those positions, 3-year tenure, correct, or whatever it
Right, so
is?
there'll be 1 for 3 and 1 for 2 to fulfill the rest of this.
So it remains staggered, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I like the idea of getting applications. You said June 25th, you're on vacation?
So my thought process, and so, I don't think there's a good time during the summer. But I also think it's important to keep, this open
Mm-hmm.
for a period of time, because, people are gonna either decide they wanna do it or don't wanna do it. And I think it's important enough that we should give people an opportunity to make that decision. And so,
So what if we kept it open from today, the 28th, until June 25th, that meeting? So anyone who fills out an application can show up on the June 25th meeting to speak with us, because it sounds like what you're saying, Josh, is, and I agree, anyone who fills out an application, there'll be no prior vetting process by select board. They can all be here for the 25th meeting. Unfortunately,
That's fine.
Deb won't be able to make it. But then we can get some feedback at that 25th meeting. Since it's public, you will be able to review it if you wanted. And then on the July 9th meeting, the board will make a decision. Does that sound good to folks?
It won't give us much time for a public.
Well, if on the 25th is the time, oh, I see what you're saying, is if they come and speak. on the
They
25th.
They can still come the 25th. We could do a public thing afterwards. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I-
right.
I don't know which way you
I-
want to do
I-
it.
so-
Yeah, I know what you're
No,
saying.
no.
My point was, while I have questions I'd be prepared to ask and all that, you know, I think the public comment and sort of having the public lead, you know, having it, almost like a workshop maybe, but open to public, so that maybe we start with some questions, and then we open it up to further questions. Just because, I mean, I'm sure that, it was just a thought, I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're getting at. I want to make sure that this is open for people to apply for at least 2 weeks. And it is the summertime. Someone who wants to apply is on vacation this week off in Timbuktu, and they come home next week and realize what's going on. It feels like it's pushing them.
Well, maybe, like you said, leave it open to the 25th. On the 25th, the candidates come in, introduce themselves, why they've applied, and then have a public meet the candidate sometime the week of July 8th through 12th.
Well, what if this? What if we did that, and we have a July 9th meeting? What if that July 9th meeting, which we don't have anything on here for, so we have the candidates come in, introduce themselves on the 25th. July 9th, the public can then come in and share their opinions or share some feedback, and then after we receive that feedback on the 9th, we have a discussion and we make the appointment on July 9th. Does that work? Because then it gives everyone a chance to come in, make their case, say why they're on the board. We can ask them some questions on the 25th as well. Then on July 9th, we can get some public feedback. And then I'm comfortable with us just because of the timeline, hearing that feedback on the 9th and making a decision on the 9th, unless there's something very pressing that pops up that we say we need to push this to the meeting on the 23rd, July 23rd. But that gives us that option. So July 25 would be application deadline and introduction. Sorry, intro. June, yep. And then we would, and that leaves it about a month for people to fill out applications. And then on July 9th, we'll have folks from the public can come in and give us some feedback, or they can email us feedback from whatever they saw on the 25th to the 9th or whatever. So July 9th is kind of that public feedback, and then we will discuss and make an appointment on July 9th.
So I think you're saying at the select board meeting on the 9th.
Yep.
Public comment section.
For
Will include feedback to. for
yeah,
the
and so
candidates.
so at the beginning of that meeting, everyone has their 3-minute public comment,
Yeah.
but that's where people could say, you know,
I'm in favor.
I watched this meeting, or I attended the June 25th meeting and saw these candidates, and I support candidate so and so, or if there's any sort of whatever, and then we can take that as some feedback. You know, Jerry, what do you think?
Are you gonna allow the public to be able to ask the candidates questions?
No, I wasn't going to. No, I wasn't thinking that.
But it gives the candidates no time to have a meet the candidate session,
Mm.
like.
Well, I think that that's where kind of like a regular election, it would fall on them to talk to whomever they might want for constituents or something like that. Because it seems like what we're trying to bridge the gap here of is our policy put in place is that we would just appoint somebody, and then the normal election process is just a full election. So what we're trying to say is you can apply, you can come speak to the community as a whole in a public format, and then the select board will make a decision taking into consideration that public feedback. So I think that that's what Josh is proposing, is kind of that middle ground. So, no?
That's not what I proposed.
So, no, I'm trying to understand.
No, I propose where a meet the candidate that the public can ask, because
Okay, that was my misunderstanding.
that's, frankly, I think that's important. I think that was what the comment was, we're making the decision, and if we're asking the questions,
So,
the public might have other questions, and if one of the concerns is getting the public involved, then I think they need to be involved. Whether that be something that we initiate on our own. There's only three people here, so I'll just look, somebody else wants to organize, cause I know, you know, you have nothing else going on, right? And I've been thinking on like historic district commission. I've been going, it's still, ever since then.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I think that's a better, I don't know,
So you wanna meet the candidates and you want potentially the select board present to
I don't.
hear out?
If we're gonna say, hey, the select board is hosting, we're gonna open up the Eureka Center to have whoever is interested in running come and answer questions, I don't need them to come talk to me individually. Because that's an opportunity, I think, that we should be attending since we're making the decision. But I think it's important to have some other voices and concerns because.
So what if June 20?
Or we could just do it without,
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I think it's
Or we
important.
can hold an election.
at this point.
No. What if the June 25th meeting is a facilitated meet and greet the candidates where people can ask questions and we're just there to observe? I mean,
Couldn't you do it that way, have them meet the candidates, if you wanted to go and ask questions, that's fine. And then when you have a regular meeting, folks that met the candidates, if they have comments that they wanna come in and share with you, they can do that, and then you can, you know, take those into consideration.
that
and
yeah, I
then-
like that a little bit more.
And then go from there.
Who's hosting Meet the Candidates?
That's what yeah. So in the past, has the town ever I thought the town has never hosted, yeah.
Meet the Candidates, it's not been an
So-
our tradition. We've done Meet the Candidates page
Mm-hmm.
where they can submit biographies.
Sorry,
Mhm.
that was my confusion, I thought the town hosted it.
No.
Fine, let's remove that component then entirely, and let's say the 25th is when applications are due. If someone wants to host a meet the candidates and they come give us some feedback, anyone can give us feedback on the July 9th meeting, but we want applications due by June 25th, and then on July 9th, the select board will make a decision, and we are always open to feedback from folks, so,
Community comments.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, I think if we lay out this timeline, we're saying, hey, we're gonna have it open for 4 weeks. And then we'll post on the 25th, here are the people who applied. If someone else wants to do a meet the candidates, that's fine, but we will then accept comments on July 9th at the beginning of our meeting on your feedback on who should be picked. I mean, there's nothing stopping someone to apply to show up on the 9th and say, I think I'm the person for the job, that's fine too. And then July 9th, the select board will make the appointment. Does that work for folks? So June 25th application deadline. July 9th will be a decision, and we just want to make it explicitly clear to everyone listening. We want to hear feedback if you have some after you've had the opportunity to see the applicant list, and if there is an opportunity for you to meet the candidates, for you to share your feelings with us either via email or in public comment on the July 9th meeting. So.
Good time for people who haven't felt heard to be heard.
Mm-hmm. So I'll add that to the June 25th meeting. And then, so I'm assuming the town will just circulate that in the normal venues. Yep.
Yeah, just.
Is that clear as mud for you, what we're doing?
I've got it.
All right, so we'll circulate right now that the applications will be accepted until close of business on June 25th, and the select board will be making a decision on July 9th, but we encourage folks to give us feedback at the July 9th meeting during public comment on anything that they know about candidates.
When you say applications, do you mean the appointment by municipal officers application? That one, is that the
Yep.
one you want to fill out?
Yep.
Which is on our website under the town clerk.
Mm-hmm. All right,
So as applications come in, some come early, do we want to put their bio, we want to put their bio up too, right, at the same time?
We can do that, or we should announce that, please submit a biography.
Yeah.
Your application, if you would
Yeah.
like to be included on the Meet Candidates page.
Right. Yeah, okay, we'll figure it out.
all right. Where'd my agenda go here?
Manager report.
Manager report, thank you.
Yeah, couple things. The June 11th select board meeting is voting day, so that's gonna be a busy day for us. Are you doing it at the AMVets, Jess, or?
The
Yeah.
election?
Yeah.
Yes,
Election
June
on
11th election, yeah, which will be the RSU 5
Yeah.
budget validation, the state primary, and the Region 10 bond question.
Yeah, and a select board meeting, so staff will be busy working, but you know, they're on the same day.
Yeah, so does that, are you saying that that's a bad meeting then?
Well, no, but Jessica can't be here because she's
Yeah.
gonna run the election, we'll have somebody else taking minutes, Devin will be, it's just gonna be a busy day, it's just more so having awareness that your June 11th select board meeting is the same day as voting. Just, that's all, just,
Okay. And so far, what we have on that agenda is gonna be goals for the board and town manager. That was kind of our goal discussion,
Yeah.
which feels a little bit more workshop-y anyways. And then the lawyer selection, and then the finalizing quitclaim deed.
okay.
And so those are the three things we have on there. Do we think that that is too much?
Can I have one of those?
Yeah. So I'll hand these out now. Jerry and I met just because I know that we've put a lot of things out on the board here, and we've talked a lot about, hey, next meeting we should this, next meeting we should that. So Jerry and I met just to kind of roughly frame out what might be on upcoming agendas, and we could probably put this on the website as well. But this is kind of what we have listed here, because we've got some extra meetings and stuff like that. So this is roughly what we're thinking we will talk about at those meetings. And if I just say to any board member, if there's things on here that you think need to be moved around, or cans that can be kicked, or things that you want added, let me know, and we can work them in. But anyways, continue, Jerry.
Okay, so the other one I have is that we lost our cleaner. She got done, she has another job, so I'm looking right now.
That sounded ominous. You said
Replace.
we've lost our cleaner.
Right.
Are you all right?
Yeah, they took another job, another opportunity, so right now I'm taking applications until like May 30th, and hopefully we can replace her.
What do we pay per hour? Can you say that?
Well, the last person we was paying minimum wage,
Mm-hmm.
that made it tough to,
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Charge it.
Yeah.
so we, I'll do the best I can, but I don't know if I can stay within that.
Yeah, that's.
So we'll see what we get. And go from
How does that work for your budget? Like, do you have cleaning services budgeted, or was?
I do, but it was at the current rate that it was, which we're gonna look
Okay.
Yeah.
at that a little bit differently next time we do a budget. So when we run into these situations, because it's not a zero-sum budget,
Mhm.
I kind of budget it that way for the cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, so my question there, without getting too detailed into your work, is what's the frequency the cleaner comes?
they put about 7 to 10 hours in, and they clean the town office, Public Works, and Eureka.
Yeah, I guess
So they do one thorough cleaning, and
Mhm.
then in the middle of the week, they'll come in and kind of just pick stuff up a little bit, like especially in the wintertime when they're tracking and salt
My-
and sand and that.
the reason I ask is, at minimum wages can be hard to maintain workforce, period.
Right.
So maybe there's some flexibility to, concentrate all of those funds into that one good cleaning per week, with some of those interim stuff getting skipped, or even if it's taking out your own trash, or just as a stopgap for this
Right.
year until we can budget something.
Yeah.
Just
well,
just a thought.
yeah,
You
I'll
you
work
run
it
your
out.
office
Yeah,
how
I'll
you
work it
need,
out.
but
I'll figure it out. Depending on
'Cause
who apply.
all the cleaners that I've looked at aren't charging minimum wage for their cleaning services, especially not if you have to clean up after me.
Just prepare yourself for next budget season.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, but this is, thank you for bringing it to our attention
Yeah.
now.
The only other thing that I just wanna make you aware of, I'm not gonna mention any names, I'm not gonna mention any addresses, but there have been some residents using fake tags on trash. So I've called the sheriff's office.
Fake tag?
Yeah, they made their own. So if the seller called, let me know, they have the evidence. So.
Wasn't me.
So they're just making aware,
Yeah.
and I'm on it.
I saw you.
I was looking to see your reaction.
Yeah,
Residents
What a
listening,
genius
if
idea.
you're gonna continue to do that, the town will press charges for theft of services.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
yeah,
So we're,
and like,
We're-
the
we're-
Casella
we're
knows who
on
you are when you put fake tags on and put it in front of your house, so.
that's really pretty much, all I got for you as far as the excitement.
Alrighty.
That's not a rampant problem, it's just one or two people.
It's the first I've heard of it, but
So one resident.
maybe, there might be more, we're talking, like I said, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna get anyone, mention any names or addresses or anything like that, but we're on it.
I shouldn't even say, I don't even use all my tags.
If
I
you're
mean,
gonna
maybe
do
some-
that, I just let everybody here know, the residents, know, you're gonna get
We,
caught,
we produce like trash once every 3 weeks, you know.
you know, you will get caught eventually, so.
We should have asked the lawyers tonight if they have any trash violation experience.
I mean, they got so bad that the yellow on the stickers was just highlighter.
Well, hopefully, bringing it to knowledge lets people know that you're not fooling anybody.
Right.
That's
The
a new
sheriff
one.
has been called, so. So that's
Alrighty.
really all I got for the manager report, that's probably my excitement since last week.
I'm glad you're on it, Jerry.
Yeah.
Any board member reports?
Not a report, a question, because I'm not sure when the
Yeah.
appropriate time is.
You're good.
I forgot at the beginning, we have the catering permits under the consent agenda.
Yeah.
I thought that you were,
So I do the BYOB ones, but the catering ones are a little bit different. You can authorize me to sign it, that's fine, but that was the more of the BYOB at the AMVets.
Mm-hmm.
So the catering ones are a little bit more because more traffic goes to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they did them last year, and you approved them.
Yeah.
Russell and Vine, I think I think the board ought to be aware of that because.
Yeah, but there was a whole conversation around that last year, if I remember correctly.
I thought that was, the conversation with them was what, but I could be wrong. but
I
don't-
thought yeah, I think you're right too. I thought we gave them carte blanche on.
Yeah.
Hey, that's fine, I can. that's
I
what you
wasn't-
wanna do.
If you think we should know about it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I
think
just,
you should, because it's a,
okay.
you know.
That works
they're-
then.
they're-
Yeah.
They're estimating 90 people, it's not that big a
Yeah.
deal, but if you see
It's a
people
fair
parked out
amount.
on the road, which they're saying they're not in this
Right.
thing, I
Alright.
think you'll know why.
Yeah.
If people give you a call and go, what's going on? You know?
any other board member reports? Like I said, I was just gonna say that this is our rough guide outline, and, you know, I've heard in the past, people are like, I don't even know what we're talking about next meeting or meeting after. This can change, this isn't set in stone, but I just wanted to give everyone an idea. And this way too, I understand that it's like, it's summertime, people are busy, but now if you have a rough idea of what the next month of meetings are like, and you're planning your vacation, when you're getting out, maybe you're like, oh, that's something that I really want to attend, can we shift it, or can we, maybe do something different with scheduling or whatever, so I just want this to be out there and transparent for folks. We do have the extra meeting on the 18th, which is the workshop for law enforcement discussion, and that is at 6 p.m. But other than that, everything that you have here should be roughly what we're looking at. The only thing I would other say for board members too is just like, looks like we're having applications open for different things. I just encourage folks to, as individuals, let everyone you know, you know, now's the time to get involved if you're looking to, so.
Do you wanna mention, while Lois is here on the 25th, that we'll be talking about this story?
Yeah, so we're, I don't know if, Lois, you were watching the meeting or anything, but we
It wasn't, if I can just say, I got a message to come down.
Yeah, yep, so, we had just reviewed the quick claim deed, and we had a couple edits, and then we were hoping to have, the, Durham Historical Society come on the June 11th meeting. I know that you have all in the past mentioned that you may have an inventory of what's there and what's owned by the town, what's owned by you all, and we just wanted to make sure we had all that squared away, so there's a full understanding of what's yours, what's the town's, what the storage is and stuff like that, so we're all on the same page for future boards and iterations to know, so.
That inventory?
Yep.
I just read an email, that inventory will be available to you within the next couple days.
Oh, perfect, yep, and so we just wanted to make sure we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's, and everyone leaves the interaction knowing this is what's in the building, this is what's ours, this is what's on loan. We're kind of saying like with other museums, sometimes you'll see like on loan from the town of Durham, on loan from so-and-so, that way everyone's buns are covered, so.
But I'm also talking about the June 25th, where Lois is on the Historic District Commission.
Oh,
We're gonna be discussing Article 12 of 5.14,
yeah,
so,
sorry, I was,
What on 5.14? I'm sorry.
on,
The land use.
yeah, June 25th. we're gonna
we'll just
be
give
talking-
Lois a copy of this.
Okay, thank you. I'll get it after the camera gets off.
Okay.
But perfect, sorry, yes, you said Lois and I went to the wrong Durham Historical. Lois Durham Historical, that's what goes on in my brain, and then I'm looking for that final qualifier there. But Eric, other than that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved, any, do I have a second? All in favor? All opposition? All right, and I already kind of covered the upcoming meetings, but just keep an eye on your schedules because we got a little bit different meeting frequency going on. But you have that document now, and like I said, Jerry and I are going to try to get together every month to frame out what the next 2-3 meetings might look like. So I'm hoping to give this update regularly. So, all right.
Is there any type of prep work we need to do for the workshop on the law enforcement?
I think
Studying up anything, I don't have to read anything.
I think this is just our first listening session.
They're
Or you can go watch some episodes of Cops or something, Law and Order.
They're gonna come in with, I told Chief McGee, I want you to come in, introduce the topic again with a little more detail. And then we'll turn it over to the sheriff and the chief deputy, and they can explain the different options that they can provide.
Yeah. Is there, I know that we obviously advertise that we have our meetings. If there's a way that we can make sure folks really know that on this special workshop, there is this listening session, because this is something that I feel like folks are gonna wanna hear. So it's not open to the public to comment on, but just to listen. If there's a way we can just make sure folks know. If you wanna hear the initial discussion on June 18th, we're hearing it out. I mean, it's all open to the public anyways, but I just feel like making that very clear would be great. All right, motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
all in favor? Any opposition, seeing none?
no discussion?
No discussion, adjourning. Good point. I feel like we got a lot done tonight.
You did.
You guys started earlier, and I
Well,
missed.
yeah, it was, we had this.